Street gospel, light of the temple. Sword swing, killer live from the ghetto. The hood messenger, let them know hell's close. Black burial, the devil in a black cloak.
Yo, what is up? Welcome to the Street Gospel Podcast. I'm your host, Dave One. And this is episode number... Yo, Cam, what episode is this? 71? This is episode 71. If you saw our last episode, it was with Jay Gauthier Jr. Dude was fun. Knew his stuff when it came to money and sports and God. Solid dude, man, that still gives back in his home church with his mom and dad. That they're the pastors, and gets a lot of good advice for money. When you grow up in the hood, like most of us, you don't really know about money. Nobody teaches you about money. Nobody helps you. Nobody knows about money. They think they know about money, but they don't. But Jay broke it down for us. So if you haven't watched that podcast, make sure you go back, watch that podcast. Jay's legit. All right. With that said, check it out. Subscribe button. So if you're watching us on YouTube right now, hit that little subscribe button, that little bell right there. Subscribe. I mean, we need people to subscribe. If you like the podcast, please share with somebody. Make sure they check it out. And then if you're watching on Spotify or listening to us on any other platform, subscribe. But enough of that. We're going to get started here. And I'm pretty excited about this guest today. So we met at church. She is a great friend to many women. She's a great friend to my wife, so she's a great friend. She's a woman of God. I like her because she's real, and I feel she's fun. Every time I see her, she's fun. Has a smile on her face. She's a boss at work. I mean, she handles her business. A great woman. So I want to welcome to the Street Gospel Podcast, Miss Lindsay Costa.
Oh, dude, thank you so much for that intro. Thank you. Very grateful to be here.
I'm glad you came.
Yes, I'm nervous, but I've learned a long time ago when God gives you an opportunity, you don't say no to it, regardless of how scared you are. So,
were you really scared?
Oh, dude, I don't got social media, so this and I've seen you got a good number on you on the following, so I was like, oh Lord Jesus. I was like, be with me.
Okay. What is the story with you and social media?
Okay.
Because it was funny because, you went to dinner with my wife. You guys had a great time. You've been in church. And so I'm like, hey, I was just thinking to myself, hey, I'm going to look for Lindsay on she's got, and I'm like, so maybe they'll have her. So I think I looked up on Eileen's friends and Mark's friends, and then some other church people friend, and Rachel, and then Melissa. And I'm looking at all, and I'm like, wait a minute. And then I came home and was like, no, she doesn't have social media. So what is the story?
Dude,
with
I'm
that?
like a CIA agent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, if you want to Google my name, you're
that's
like,
unheard
nothing.
of.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one thing to have an account,
yeah,
and never post, right?
Yeah.
And you're just creeping on everybody's page.
Oh, that's my grandma, by the way. Social media was made for my 82-year-old grandma. She's like, I
Mine
get to
too.
just kick it and watch everybody's business. I was like, oh Lord.
Oh, my grandpa's like that too.
Yeah.
He has one. He's like 85, probably.
Right?
And
I was out.
And he posts his pictures.
Dude, same. And she does unauthorized. You're like mid chew, you know what I mean? And you're just like, bro, all my chins are there. Like you're that's where, but
My grandpa posts his pictures, and he's like, and it's random, and he's like, this is my son, and Melissa's like,
he's proud.
Who? No. She's like, do you know this guy? And I go, I've never seen that dude in my life. She was, I thought your grandpa only had two sons. I go, yeah, my dad and my Uncle Paul. That's it. I don't know those people. He must have a third family or somewhere hiding or something like that.
Snap.
So it's strange. Love you, Grandpa Ralph.
Yeah, you're right. I know, grandma, same thing. Throwing the body.
So no social media.
No social media.
Okay, tell me what's the story on that.
All right, I'm gonna show my age a little bit on this. So I remember when social media came out, and we'll go into my story, but I was partying at a very, very young age.
Okay.
So I was probably in high school, I want to say, when social media came out. We got a computer at our home because my aunt bought it for me thinking I was going to use it for school. No. And so, I just remember, I thought it was the weirdest thing because, one, look, the way I was raised, my dad was from the hood. My mom was super paranoid. So I just kind of always was like watching my surroundings, not wanting really people in my stuff. And then with the social media, and I'm not capping on anybody that has it. For businesses, it's great, like all that stuff aside.
Right.
But when it first came out, it was MySpace. At least that's what I remember everyone saying. I'm like, so you just sit at home pretending to have a life? And like, it was the weirdest thing to me because I was out partying. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to like actually go live it. So, you know what I mean? Like I was just out. And then, dude, I loved a flip phone. I was like anti iPhone because I knew my face was going to hit the keys. Like I was not good with the whole touch screen.
Wow.
Oh, dude, I'm talking, I'm old school when it comes to that. So I think for me, the more it started increasing, like the weirder it got for me, where I'm just like, then because of my choices in life, I was like, I don't want nobody knowing where I am or who I am. So I'm very big. When I have a saying, I go, if you want to be in my life, you have my phone number. Straight up. You want to send me pictures, text it to me. If I want to send you pictures, I text it to you. But for the most part, a lot of people that I'll talk to or whatever, a lot of their fights come from social media. And I'm like, it's not a real world, right? Like it's not a physical human being. You know what I mean? Like and I just say communication, it has a lot to do with just other than words. It's your body language, your tone of voice. So to me, if you think about like a bad text you got, imagine bad posts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, to me, I like to keep it simple in my life.
Do you have a small circle?
As far as a close net, oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's very small. It's like my 3. And I'm going to, I told him I'm going to blast him right now because they're such a big part of my story. But Rachel Lindbergh, you had her here.
So Rachel was on here. Great episode.
She's like straight up my spiritual mom, hands down.
Dope.
And then Betty and Courtney, they're like they're like my ride or dies right there, my 2 girls. And it's funny because me and Betty are like the complete opposite. We call each other yin and yang, but yet we're founded in Christ. So
yeah, you guys are always together.
Always together.
She's a little bit more calmer, I should say, than you.
Oh, for sure.
That's the vibe I got.
Dude, we are yin and yang. We joke about that all the time. But she was actually the very first human being I met at the time. It was Praise Chapel.
At church, yeah.
Yeah, so God, because when I went, I was not looking to make friends or do the church thing.
So you're totally, you seem like a social person, but from the sounds of this right now, it seems you're not social.
So I'm very social. Okay. I'm outgoing. I was raised in a big family, partying all the time. I learned how to adapt in any situation. Okay. That was something that I actually had kind of no choice growing up. But there is a side to me that
you leave for
like I don't believe, like when I do testimonies or when I'm counseling or helping somebody, I'll open up, and that's a mutual exchange of vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
But as far as
putting everything out
just there, to put it out there, that's not my vibe. It's just not my thing. I'm like, yeah.
I think I think there has to be some. I think that's the thing. You have to leave some sort of mystery in your life.
Oh yeah.
Because I think even now when I go out to eat with people, sometimes people will not ask me like, "How's the podcast?" Or, "Oh, you're into jujitsu? Like, what's going?" And it's weird. And I almost think like at first I used to be like, "Are they just not interested?" And then I started thinking like maybe the people are just they see it already. Yeah. Because I posted it. Yeah. So they don't ask. So, but sometimes I get a little offended. So sometimes like, there's some people on my social media that don't deserve.
It's like you get the boot.
Well, there's a thing on Instagram where you have close friends, right? Yeah. And you only allow them to see the close stuff. Yeah. And I feel like those close friends will really like what you post or maybe ask you a question about it. But sometimes it's like, there's random stuff that I'll put on there. But there is some personal stuff, and I'm like, yeah, they don't need to know everything I'm doing.
And that's the thing, right? That's kind of what I look at it as. It's like you don't. I'm not a product, right? Like to get access to me whenever, or to even say, "Oh, I want to see who you are." I'm like, right. If you want to see who you are, do what me and Melissa did. We'll go have a 6-hour, you know what I mean, a dinner. By the way, which was hilarious. She was like, "My family thinks I'm kidnapped."
Okay, yeah. So it was like she left, and I was like, "All right, have a good time." Yeah. And I'm like, then it was like 7:30. I'm like, oh yeah, she should be on her way back home. Yeah. Then it was like 9:30, and I'm like, yo. And I tell Ashley, I said, hey, can you text your mom for me? So then she's like, oh yeah, she's still there. And I'm still there. What the heck? And then I'm like, I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
Right? And it was like, it had to be like almost 11.
Dude.
It was late.
We realized what time it was when people were like, you could tell the workers were closing up shop. We were like, oh, and that's like the inside joke. If I'm going to keep it real, they're always like, oh, if you're going to have lunch or dinner with Lindsay, like clear your schedule.
Yeah.
To me, I go deep right off the bat. Like I'm one of those people, I could do surface. I do it in business all the time. But if I'm going to spend time with you and I'm actually going to, you know what I mean, go that route, I want to know you know you. I don't want to know what you're presenting me. I want to know who you are. And it's a mutual thing. I'm going to show you who I am. And I just love your wife, by the way. Like I go instantly when I first met her, super sweet.
She's cool, huh?
Dude, you can see the fruits of the spirit right through her, the kindness, the gentleness, and she feels safe immediately.
Yeah.
And sorry, I talk with my hands a lot, so I hope I'm not like messing up no sound. But
no, that's fine.
All right, but when we finally got to sit down and talk, and we've been talking since you guys came to church, like, oh man, we should go to lunch, and and then we had a little exchange at one of the women's things, and then that's when we're like, no, let's do this. You know what I mean? Especially when you asked me to do this, I was like, oh no, girl, I want to talk to you first before we go any further with the podcast.
Well, yeah, I figured it was going to be good if she spent that much time with you. I mean, I was like, okay, they're vibing. It must be a good thing.
Oh, she's awesome.
So
dude.
I was like, okay,
she's awesome. So you guys are a great couple.
Thank you. Yes. I mean, we try. Okay, so where did you grow up?
All over the place, if I'm going to be honest with you. So this question always tricks me up because when I was young, like I'm going to say before 12 years old, my fundamental years, it was split up. So my parents divorced when I was like 3. So cognitively from whatever I remember. So my dad grew up in Paramount Compton area. So he hood. We're talking like used to throw bones with shot collars at very big clubs, if you will. You know what I mean? And then you got my mom. My mom's side of the family, like my grandfather would be like at Watts. They grew up in like Compton, all these different places. And then when she was younger, because there was 3 of her girls at the time, they moved to downtown Fullerton. Okay. So I say Fulas. So they went to downtown Fulas, and my grandma still lives there. So when they divorced, me and my mom, bro, it was crazy. That's my Mexican. So I'm Mexican Italian. That's one thing I loved about your wife too. Like right off the bat, we sat down. She was like, "What are you?"
What are you?
I was like, I know I look white. Trust me, I'm very aware of that.
I didn't think you looked a little white. Okay. A little white. But not all the way white. I was feeling like, okay, what is she?
It depends on how much highlights I get. You know what I mean?
What did you call yourself when you walked in?
Oh, a spicy meatball. Dude. That's it right there. And so I'm Italian Mexican, and on my mom's side, when we moved in my grandma's, it was like my grandma, grandpa, my 3 uncles, then my aunt eventually moved in, 2 dogs from the pound and canaries. You know what I mean? Like it was just like a gang of us squished in this like 4-bedroom, 2-bath kind of pad, and it was like Hunger Games over there. You know what I mean? And then I go visit my dad on the weekends, and we go down to Paramount area, and that was a whole different vibe. My dad had 38 snub nose, put in my hand to make sure I wasn't scared. My Uncle Donnie sleep with the shotgun. It was just a totally extreme, different thing in a sense of my mom's side was more like partying and all that stuff. And my dad was more like that. He wanted to teach me how to defend myself. Me and my pops had fun too.
Are you the only child?
That I thought I was. I recently found out. Hey, I'm a person that when I do something, I'm going to double down on it. But I recently found out I do have a half sibling. Okay. That's like a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, younger than me. So I always joked and said I was an Irish twin. But yeah, but for the most part, I thought I was an only child. But I grew up with uncles that were only about 13 years older than me. Okay, so I
know how that goes.
Yeah, so I was like a little sister. And I mean, they tortured me like one. I mean,
that must be on your Mexican side because it's pretty popular. You have your tia, and she's younger than you sometimes.
Oh yeah, you're like, what? Bro? I'm telling you right now, I was raised by probably every single member of my family. Like, oh wow, every single one of them had a hand. Like, and totally raising me. So
that's pretty extreme.
Yeah,
pretty extreme. Different culture, different way of getting raised, half and half.
Fundamental years,
right?
12 years old hits.
Okay.
And my mom, so I went to elementary school, totally opposite where my mom worked in Cyprus. And by then they like got real crazy with the zip codes because we were using my great grandma's zip code. And they were like, you either got to go to Hawaiian Gardens. That was pretty much the only area that my mom could afford.
Good old Hawaiian Gardens.
Bro, she looked at me. She's like, you're going to be in a gang. So she's like, we need to not go there. And so my aunt, her sister was already living in Placentia, and it was a suburban area. She goes, dude, come down. I found you a spot. Dude, rent back then was like a G a month. I was like, dude, I pray to God that comes around. But, you know, so we moved there. So I get pulled from friends, living with 7 people and just constant craziness to like now it's just me and my mom.
Oh, wow.
And we're in this little place. My mom hated it. It was like avocado green stove. My mom was the queen of like contact papering everything, putting carpet on carpet, because it was just two of us. And so I got pulled into Placentia, and it was like suburb to another level.
I mean, that's going from the hood,
bro,
to big time suburb.
That's why when people are laughing like, oh, you're white, I go, no, I've seen it. I stuck out. Like, I felt immediately like this was not. Because even like the finances, just everything, I'd never seen that in my life. Even my dad, when he used to pick me up, he was like, dude, he goes, I've never seen people just wave at me for no reason, like to genuinely be nice. Like, it freaked him out. You know what I mean?
It is true.
Yeah,
it is true. When you grow up in the hood and then you move to a better neighborhood and your neighbors wave to you or go, hey, how's it going? You're like, what do you want?
I'm not kidding. Right? That was me and my mom. We had neighbors try to cut, and we were so suspect of them. We're like, why are you coming over here? Like, we did not understand that. I was like, no, we're good. Thank you. Have a nice day. And it wasn't trying to be rude. It was just.
It's the way weird. You're raised.
Yeah,
it's
it was weird.
It's just different.
Totally different.
The neighborhood we live in, it's different. I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, you still have. I've been out of the hood for a long time.
Yeah.
So, but still, you have those little things. Like. Who's parked in front of the house right now?
Bro.
Why are they sitting in their car?
You just named my grandmother's biggest pet peeve.
Okay, so me and Cam laugh at this. There's been 2 dudes that pull up and they park right in front of the house, right? Oh, man. And me and Cam would be like, what's up with those dudes? And then so I didn't notice them. He noticed them right away.
Yeah.
So then I was like, I don't know. I'm going to go outside and water the grass. So I'm watering the grass,
Tell me about the car.
Looking at them, and they just sat there, right? So then, finally, they were parked a little bit down, more on the neighbor's side, and so I was like, okay. So I got out of my work truck, and I walked over there, and I was like, and I knocked on the window, like, hey man, what's up? What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
And then I looked at them, and they had ties on and white shirts. They were Mormons.
Stop it.
So they're like, I go, oh, you guys are Mormons, huh? And he's like, yeah, we're just waiting for so-and-so down the block, and we have a meeting with her every week, and that's what, and I was like, oh, because I always see you guys parked right here, so I was wondering what were you guys up to? I mean, in good neighborhoods, you don't really do that, right?
Dude,
in bad neighborhoods, you're like rolling up to the car. So I'm like,
that's an issue, and that's funny you even said with the Mormon. When I first came to Placentia, see, I was used to Jehovah's Witnesses. That's what I was used to. Like, literally out of the movie Friday. It was not even my grandma.
But that was Saturday mornings.
Dude, that was what I got. And you knew it. And you're just like, yeah, no, we're good. You know what I mean? You close the door, you're done.
Yeah.
I will never forget my first encounter with Mormons. I was 15. I was a latchkey kid at 12 because my mom, she worked till like 10. And so sometimes I basically ran my own. I knew how to live on my own since I was 12.
Oh, wow.
And so I didn't see my mom sometimes the next day. And I just remember I was by myself. Mind you, my parents raised me paranoid. I'm talking like, look all the ways. I mean, I'm talking, my dad, I mean, I have, you should see my keychains that my dad's giving me. He's like, oh, they're not brass knuckles. You could say it's a
oh, God.
Like, I mean, just crazy stuff. So I get these 2 dudes knocking on the door. And we got like the Compton screen door, okay? Like the whole thing.
Yeah.
I get my dog. And I'm just like, yeah, hey, can I help you? And it's true. They're just looking at you, smiling, and they're asking me a bunch of questions. And I was like, I like lied. I was like, oh, someone's coming over, like, da-da-da, right? Yep. I flip out. I call my friend. She lives across the street. I go, dude, get your butt over here. I see these 2 dudes that look like children of the corn just staring at me, asking me about my dog. I was like, I need you to roll up ASAP. And she had a friend in the back. She was rolling. I go, why is she laughing? She goes, dude, they're from my church. They're blah, blah, blah. I was like,
wow. Yeah, it was
weird. Just a new experience for me that I wasn't used to. That's all it was.
So, new neighborhood.
Yeah.
Was there a new Lindsay, though?
Oh, 100%.
Oh, really? So you're white now?
Oh, I had to. Well, my nickname was Ghetto. So that was, people call me by my last name or Ghetto. Those are my two names. But for me, I learned at a young age, because I was raised with adults and just everywhere, I had to learn how to adapt to survive. And I remember coming to this school really not feeling like I had anything in common with anybody, to be honest. I immediately felt different. You know, I'm with a single mom. I mean, we weren't like dirt poor, but we were, single mom income. I mean, my dad was in the picture for sure. But I mean, we're talking people had like $1 million homes, like the mom and dad. I mean, it just looked totally different. And so for me, I remember I got hooked up with this one friend. We just happened to like have a class together, which was kind of a downfall for me. And I kind of took off from there. So I was always myself, but I did adapt. I did change. Like, if you look at my senior pictures, you'll totally see that. You'll be like, oh, that's like a total white girl. Like, I did change and adapt, but I was always kind of rough around the edges, if you will.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of the same me. I was very raw. I was always honest. But I did adapt to a little bit of the ways of how they were over there, if I'm going to be honest with you. So.
And then did you get mixed up in some trouble here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, dude.
Early on or later on?
Oh, yeah. I started drinking and smoking at 12.
Okay, so the smoking part. Okay, so we love your voice, right? Me and Melissa. Yeah. And then you just recently told her it's not your natural voice. It's because you smoked forever.
That's what I'm assuming, because everybody talks. I didn't realize my voice was really that different, to be honest, until like I really came to church and everyone's like, "Oh, your voice." I'm like, "Oh, I guess it is pretty raspy." I'm like, my voice sounds like my past, just a little rough. You know what I mean? I go. But yeah, no, I started smoking cigarettes at 12. I mean, never trust an ice cream truck in a shady neighborhood. That's all I'm gonna say. And
well, you thought you were buying the little candy cigarettes?
Oh no, I knew what I was buying. They were the Mexico Marvelites, dude. I was like, hey, it did the job. So yeah, I was drinking and smoking because my family on my mom's side were big partiers. And so I was raised around that. I mean, I remember being at house parties at 5 years old in my nightgown, jumping up to like Montel, Jordan, that kind of stuff. And I mean, I had my first drink at 7, you know what I mean? Just my family just partied all the time in the Mexican culture. And my family, like, that's what happened with them. It was like a generational thing. It wasn't that I thought that was normal. So like even like holidays, we would have all my uncle's friends come over, and it ended up being like a kegger, after Thanksgiving. And so when I was 12, it kind of felt like I was, and then like I said, I met this friend and I already knew all this stuff because of what I saw. And then I kind of took off on my own, and then it just kind of went, it went from there. So it was a while. When God found me, he had a lot to clean up. So
what was your life like?
So for me, it took off. I think for me, growing up with that contrast, like I was saying, growing up in elementary school, my parents, I love them. They had a really bad divorce. I mean, really. I mean, my dad would drive to Paramount. My grandma slammed the door in her face and say, "Oh, she's not here." I'd be in the other room. I remember just bad talk with my dad and stuff. And my dad, there's a reason for it. Like my dad didn't grow up without it, with the dad. His dad was a convict, like the whole 9 yards. So the fact that I even had the father I had with the upbringing that he had was like a straight miracle from God. And so with all that being said, when I came out to here, I was already carrying a lot of stress at such a young age. I mean, I was literally getting bald spots in like, when I was in elementary school, doctors were like, "Dude, this is from stress. She has alopecia."
What did you have stress from? Just for
the atmosphere. So literally,
trying to adapt to basically maybe 3 different environments.
It is
mom, dad, and school.
And it wasn't a lot of stability, if I'm gonna be honest with you. My uncles were my uncles. Dude, they got into a lot of trouble growing up, and had parties all the time. And my mom, I think after the divorce, kind of lost her way a little bit, if I'm going to be delicate with it. So for me, I never really felt like I was a priority, if I'm going to be honest with you. Like, so I had a lot of stuff that I was just trying to almost like raise myself as a kid. I love my family. They're super funny. was super cray all day for Ray, dude. I'm gonna tell you, my grandma don't play, dude. You kick her, she'll kick you back. She don't care if you're 5. You know what I mean? Like it's just all of that. So you got the dysfunctions from all over, right? And then I'd go to my dad's, and my dad really did dote on me when I was younger. I mean, look, my dad didn't know what to do with the little girl, so I'd go to my dad's, and we would literally get Jack in a Box. This is our routine. We go get Jack in a Box. And my dad's a gambler. Or I'm going to say was a gambler. I'm speaking life to my father. Was a gambler. He taught me how to play 5 to 7 card stud and blackjack at 5, 6 years old. So we'd be watching Casino and Goodfellas, throwing, you know what I mean? Like playing cards, throwing bones and laughing. And then my dad would take me to arcades and stuff like that. And then I'd come home and there would just be some drama stuff sometimes at my mom's. And then, and even at my dad's, because I remember like even playing, like my dad would play catch with me in the front yard. I remember like the chick next door, she was getting beat up by her dude and was like running out, like screaming his name. And they were going through a bad battle with the courts and my mom and stuff. So it's just like restraining. There was just a lot of stuff there. And my dad, you know, during the Rodney King years, we were raised in a really bad area in that time with my dad. So, I mean, he was carrying a piece on him everywhere. He didn't even let me walk. So I never really just felt like a stability, right? Like when I went to school, these kids looked like they had parents that were reading to them and doing all these things. And I was just like trying to make it to the next day. You know what I mean? Like just because there was so much stuff going on at the house all the time. You know, with drinking, a lot of those things that comes with that. So with all that said, coming into this new environment and already kind of having a little experience in certain substances, I remember the first time I got drunk and I was like, oh, I arrived. Like there was a feeling of like, this is what a hug felt like. Like even when I smoked a cigarette, I was like, oh, this is what relief felt like.
Wow.
And you know, it was like my first parent, if I'm going to be honest with you, in the sense of it just gave me continual comfort, false comfort, obviously. And with that, it came craziness. Cause I always say, I go, look, I didn't realize any of this was like a spiritual thing until I got saved. Until Rachel put me under her wing and was like, oh no, those are spirits. Like she had to explain that to me. Because I mean, I had my first alcohol poisoning at 15 years old. I was a blackout drunk. My mom.
So you were drinking for comfort?
Oh,
or to get or escape?
Oh,
I should
for
say.
Sure. Yeah, like at a young age. And I think for me at first.
So you realized right away, like, oh, this is an easy escape.
Yeah. It was just, and it was something I've seen my whole life. So I thought like, oh, I'm finally of age to do this. So when I was 13, I started, I mean, I don't know how much I can say, but I was using fake IDs at 13 years old. I mean, my uncles used to snap their exes like IDs and like a credit card, and now it's like identity fraud, like a credit card they don't use. And they wouldn't train me like, oh, remember your birthday. They go, no, what's your sign? What year did you graduate high school? I mean, like I had to get trained. Wow. So I was going to bars at 13, like 14, 15, 16. I was going to Vegas at like 17, 18. Like the time I got to 21, I was, to be honest with you, I was kind of bored. Like I was over it. And so like it just felt like that for me. And so yeah, I got in a lot of mess just from the jump, you know what I mean? And so
you had to grow up super fast.
Oh, super fast. I mean, to the point where, I mean, I'd sometimes counsel my own parents, or you know what I mean? Like
Do you feel like you got ripped off a little bit as a kid?
You know what's funny? You say that. I used to be like that. If I'm gonna keep it real, I used to feel that way. And then it reminds me of like like the story of Joseph in the Bible. Like after, when I look at my life today, I really got to accept the thing. I love the things I got, and I accepted the things I didn't, if that makes sense, because I understood that without those experiences, I would not be who I am today. So with my childhood, as much as it wasn't normal and it was super dysfunctional, there was a lot of good times, I have to admit. And we joke about that in the family. We're like, dude, we probably shouldn't be like saying that now, but I had a ton of fun when it was fun. And you know, to my dad and mom's credit, it wasn't just like anybody's story. It wasn't 100% bad, right? They did things that were parental stuff. Like my dad would take me to arcades and the beach, and my mom would eventually, like sometimes just randomly say, let's go to San Diego and visit your uncle for the weekend. You know what I mean? Like we would do stuff like that. So I don't definitely feel like I was robbed. It just was very different than what most grew up with,
right.
If you should. But I never, even when I was in elementary school, I always felt, because I was around adults my whole life, I never connected with little kids. Like it was hard for me to really find out who I was. And I think that's the part that was like, now as I get older and kind of understand everything, I never really knew who I, like, you know what I mean? Like, I always felt like I was just in the shell and I was just trying to survive, to be honest with you. Up until I found Christ, to be honest with you. That was kind of the story of my life. So
when did it stop being fun for you? Because I think a lot of people, it is.
Yeah.
I love that you admit that it's fun.
Oh, yeah.
Sinning can be fun sometimes, right? Initially, it starts off great.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows that. It
Yeah.
seems great. This is fun.
Yeah.
We party. We're sneaking into bars at 15. It's all this is great.
Yeah.
But at what point? And then there's a point where people get to, and it's just like,
This ain't fun.
this ain't it no more.
Oh, dude. So for me, I definitely think it was straight up out of high school. Because I remember even and I have like 1,000 stories. I'm going to keep it real. Even in high school, junior high, all of that. And this is how sick it was. I always believed in Jesus. I'm going to say this right here. I always believed in Jesus. So
where did that come from?
My dad.
Your dad.
If my dad didn't talk to me about God, I don't know if I would have really known him. I remember my dad, because mind you, he used to go to the Compton Baptist Church, dude. We're talking straight up like falling on the floor. Like, you know what I mean? Like hardcore. But my dad didn't really live for him. My dad was a good man. He had a good heart, but you know, he liked the gambling. Yeah, he liked the stuff. So, but I remember being 5 years old. He pulled me aside and he goes, and I'm saying all this for a reason, it's building up, but he pulled me over aside and he goes, I want to tell you who God is. His name is Jesus and he's the only son of God. He came down, like he straight up told me the gospel the best he could when I was like 5 or 6. And there was something in that I just believed. Like it was not an issue for me. I was like, okay. So for me, my whole life, I believed in Jesus. I knew God, or I knew of him, I should say, but I never thought I could live for him. And and so for me, my whole life with all the crazy dysfunction, like the hardcore depression, sad moments, it was still a way of me saying, this is what I knew what life was. I remember going to church one time and there was a sermon, I think it was whatever pastors were preaching on this, and he goes, no one taught you to sin. And I was like, you have not met my family. I got to pat my grandma down when she comes to my house. She is like the biggest klepto. I was like, so for me, I know by nature, I naturally have that. But on top of that, when you have a family that almost gives you this kind of feeling of there's no rules and there's consequence, but yet I don't know how to explain that. Like my mom used to tell me, like, hey, if you fight, don't call me. If you get arrested for assault charges, don't call me. I'm not bailing you out. And I was like,
wow.
Oh, you know what I mean? Like it was, so she gave me consequences like that, but it wasn't consequences like, hey, you're not going to go out like that. You know what I mean? So It was a very confusing thing. So for me, when I got out of high school, 18, my mom, God love her, she had, a string of certain relationships. So we had this dude live with us who was not a good guy, from like when I was like 13, 14, and my senior year was 17. We came home from the river, house empty. We had 2 lawn chairs and my dog. And I remember my mom just lost her job. I'm going into senior year. I just broke up with my dude. And I remember us holding each other in the living room, just crying.
What he took everything?
Yeah, they broke up and he just wiped
salty.
the whole, so salty, dude. Like the extra on the rim of the margarita. He just took everything, bro. We walked in and we thought we got like robbed or punked. We're like, dude, nothing, no couches, nothing. So we just sat and cried for a second. And then my mom was very big. I mean, again, that's why with my past, no matter what, I learned how to survive. I learned that grit, like you don't give up no matter how hard it is. And so senior year was interesting. And so she was like, oh, I'm never going to date again. She finds a dude. And I was like super annoyed. I was like, oh, dude, you just told me all this stuff that, snap. And I laughed. So senior year comes, they get engaged. And mid-senior year, I think it was, or maybe like right after high school, they get engaged. And she's like, hey, we're going to go move over there. And I was like, we Kimosabi, I ain't moving over. I don't know this dude. And I ain't moving with another dude that I don't know because
You were done.
I was done. And which he ended up being like an amazing guy, by the way. He's my stepdad to this day. I call him Yanni. His name's John. I absolutely love him. But at the time, I didn't know that. I was an 18-year-old kid who kept getting progressively worse, more angry, more all this stuff. So when I graduated high school and the way I grew up, my family was very like, hey, you got shirt on your back, food in your stomach. and that's even sometimes, by the way, no one really looked out for my future. Meaning no one was saying, hey, what are you going to, like, my family made fun of me when I said my friends were telling me to go to college, and they were like, oh, you're going to drop out. Like, my family was not hey, let's go talk about your future. So when I graduated, and I'm seeing this a lot even in the age range of 18 to 20, there's just a sense that, and I think it's so normal for most part, you just feel lost. Like, you're just like, man, some people just look like they have it together. They have this game plan. And I barely graduated, dude. I'm talking like principal called my mom and was like, dude, if she don't pass this test, she ain't walking.
Wow.
And my mom was like, I'm going to beat you if you don't pass it. She didn't tell me to say. She's like, I'm just going to beat you. And I was like, and I got hammered that night, and I ended up copying the whole entire test the next day, and I ended up passing, and that's how I ended up walking. So shout out to everybody that helped me in high school graduate. But my point is, so when I got out, I partied that night, and I remember I came home, and I go, instead of living with them, what about me and this person who was my ex at the time? Well, I just said, I go, why don't you sublease us this place? We're 18. And she was like, great. And so that changed my course of everything. Now I had to get, like, I always worked. I worked since I was 15, but now I needed a job with insurance because I had to go to clinics for a while, no health insurance, which was horrible. And I remember getting office jobs. And so the more responsibility I was getting, because I necessarily never knew how to deal with it, I just knew to shove it down. My family's old school. You're fine. I mean, I've sprained ankles. I ain't taking to the doctor, but to wrap that up and drink so you don't feel it. You know what I mean? My family was very, very hardcore. I bled.
Pour a little tussin on it.
I'm not. More like tequila. I was like, grab that. And so for me, I grew up very hardcore in that way. So I thought feelings, you were weak. So I never knew how, if I cried, I thought you could never catch me crying in public. I grew up very hard. So in that way, where emotions were just not something that was, good. So I drank more. And so that's when it started becoming really dark. And then when I was living on my own, I mean, the fights between me and my exes were like, on an episode of Cops. You know what I mean? It's just like one of those types of deals.
Are you picking the worst?
Dude, you choose the love you think you deserve. So if I was taught that everybody comes before you, right? Like, I was taught that. Because also being in a drinking home, I learned how to take care of when my uncles were too hammered to go to bed. You know what I mean? Like, I learned all that. So for me, my needs were very apparent that they were not a priority. My feelings were not a priority. And this isn't a cap on my family because I love them. They literally didn't know how. It's not like, and I think growing up, I thought they knew how, and just something about me they didn't want to give. It didn't hit me till I was older. I'm like, oh, you literally didn't have it to give me. And
I think that's big because I think too many people blame their parents, and some it's rightfully so. I could see that, but sometimes you have to really think about what was their capacity really,
dude,
right? What was their capacity really to be a good parent? You know what I mean? I think a lot of people like complain about that sometimes, and then they don't think about, like, well, where did they come from? You know, how hard was their life growing up? Were they a little bit better? I don't know, but it's weird like that.
And that's where, like, for me, I didn't get to be that way though until I started healing. When I started healing,
it takes
you know
time.
What I mean? It takes time because I'll admit I was that person that at first I thought it was always me. Like, I thought I was like a freak or something. Like, I was just born evil because some of my caretakers on my aunts, since their stuff got put on me. Let's just say that. So I took on a lot of people's stuff.
It seems like you were the youngest, but you were like the mother of the family.
Oh, dude.
Is that kind of right?
Oh, in a sense, like, where I was definitely always trying to make sure everybody's feelings were kind of taken care of, if you will. And even when I had my homeboys, like, growing, like, even in high school, when I met this crew of crazy, dude, some of these guys, I'm like, you have no fear. It was like the Lost Boys, and I felt like Wendy. You know what I mean? Like, I would be stitching them up after they got stabbed. Like, I was the one, like, cleaning up the head wounds. Like, I remember 15, someone getting jumped, and I'm like, all right, let's see. Do you got it?
Like, no big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. Like, I was just like, I wasn't like, ex got stabbed. I, like, threw out my cigarette. I literally, like, covered his wound. And so for me, I was just raised where you just adapt, you move forward, whatever. And so for me, but yeah, to answer that question, it was after high school for sure. So I had to kind of give that preference because after high school, the real world really hit me.
Yeah.
And the people I was connecting to, and I'm not going to play victim either because forever I was like, oh, my ex. No, I picked him. I definitely had my part in all that. And I was a psycho back then, to be honest with you, because I had all this anger built up. Then you put booze next to it or drugs or whatever, which, again, Satan's having a field day. He's like, oh, heck yes.
What kind of drunk were you?
Oh, I was a sloppy Johansson.
Like gonna fight or just
it depended.
Whatever.
To be honest, it was like Russian roulette with me. To be honest, like I literally was like super fun and funny. I was super something else where you're like, Lord Jesus, save me. And then I remember my mom saying, you're dark right now. Don't drink.
Wow.
Like, so she saw this side of me. When I do feel like it's a spirit that kept jumping, like, he's like, oh, worked with her dad, and I would ask my dad, I'd get him blackout rages. And so, yeah, I've like fought, you know what I mean? Like all of that into where it went super violent. And when I was raised with seeing a lot of that stuff and being taught certain things, I was like a dude, like when I fought. So it was not like pulling your hair. It was like, my dad showed me my dad showed me how to throw. He used to tell me, goes, these hurt them, these hurt you. Like that was my dad was a bouncer for years, a barber. Like my dad's knuckles are pressed back from fighting. And I'm not saying any of that to brag, but my point is my dad was very primal. Okay, so he was raised getting jumped by certain, just, you know what I mean? Like sometimes they would make him fight certain people just to kind of rank up certain people, blah, blah, blah. So for me, I was raised with that on that side. And then my uncles on my mom's, they wanted me to be tough. So we just, dude, I was getting jumped almost on a daily basis just for the remote control. You know what I mean? So so I had all this stuff. And then you throw booze into it on a bad day for me if I'm overstressed or just certain things. And I think that's what used to scare me. I was a blackout drunk. Every time though, I was a blackout drunk. And so when I woke up, I really didn't know what happened until I looked at my phone, if I had it, and I would be like, I'd have a routine. I'm like, where's my phone? Where's my keys? Like, who am I? Where am I? You know what I mean? Like, and then I would know how bad it was depending if someone wasn't going to talk to me or not. So I was like, and the shame that comes on you, dude, the next day, you don't even want to ask. You don't even want to ask because you're like, I don't even want to know what I did. You know what I mean? So yeah, it just got worse. And that's something I always tell people. I go, if you're doing this now, and I was young, I go, it's only going to get worse. If you have not developed any coping skills, one, you don't have Christ in you. That's just number one. You're using a substance that is literally opening doors to the demonic side that is just having a field day with you. You know what I mean? Right. And for me as a woman, it just took me to so many demoralizing places that, like I said, it reminds me of the Bible verse, like, the much has been forgiven. Like, I am very grateful to the Lord because of how much work he has done in my life.
How much is that spiritual? I mean, for people out there that don't think like, it's a spiritual thing. Like they just think, well, I'm getting drunk and it gets bad, but it drinking it and maybe a little bit of weed here and there, it's not a big deal, but it takes over.
Oh, dude, I literally had an experience where, especially towards the end, so I'm going to just blast myself. So I'm 37, right? So at 28.
Youngster.
I know. Thank you. But I internally feel old. So I'm just like, and I have smoker wrinkles. So I'm like, thank you, Jesus, for these bangs. But I'm like, but when I was 28, that was the peak of my insanity. And I use the term insanity because I remember just jumping from relationship to relationship, living with them too. And my last one, again, it just kept getting worse. And by the grace of God, I always was good at business, which was a trip. I always had a really strong work ethic. So I'd be like super hungover, dude. I'd pop 2 Advil, smoke a cigarette, and I'd go to work and just kill it. Like that was just, I worked off the adrenaline. And so, but it was seeping in every way. And so for me, I remember one incident with my last person I was living with. I literally heard a spirit that wasn't good. Because for me, a Tuesday around that time, and I'm just going to be transparent because like I said, I'm doubling down on this. It would be like I'd come home from work, long day at work, stressed out, not knowing how to cope with stress. And when really it's just pressure, and I would easily do half a Xanny bar, a whole Xanny bar, smoke a couple bowls, get a few vodka drinks and then a few beers and cook dinner. And that was like a light buzz just to like say, oh, I need to unwind from the day.
That's a light buzz.
That's a light buzz for me to unwind from the day. And so I'm like cooking dinner and this story trips me out. And I don't even know if I'm going to say the whole thing. It's a podcast, but long story short, I remember me and my ex getting like a really bad fight to the point where it looks like he's going to like straight headbutt me. And we used to, when I fought with my exes, it was like manning up, like straight up, like man to man, almost like manning up. And the way I was raised, you didn't back down. My dad used to always tell me this thing because he's like, you only fight if someone puts their hands on you or someone you love. That was something my dad ingrained in me like at 5, 6 years old. And so by the grace of God, I didn't have to fight a lot because of that. He's always telling me like the barkers, let them bark, whatever, but it's the quiet one. You know, my dad taught me all that stuff. But with guys, and you had those substances in you, I remember feeling a rage that literally overtook me. And to a place where I actually, and I'm going to share this because I don't know if it's going to help somebody. I remember slamming a knife. I was cooking dinner and he was just bam in my face. And I remember slamming it right to his Adam's apple. I go, you come near me. I go, I'm going to slice your throat and get your fist and start punching myself and get away with your murder tonight. And say it's self-defense. And I literally got the visual of the entire thing, and I could literally hear a voice saying, do it. Like almost like I was saliving, like, do it. And that's how I knew God had a covering on me always. Something stopped me, and I dropped the knife, and I remember I ran to the bathroom. I locked myself in the bathroom, and I just remember shaking. And I looked into the bathroom window, and I didn't even recognize myself, dude. Like, I could see whatever spirit was on me, and I remember crying to God. I'm like, how did I get here? How is this a Tuesday for me? And, yeah, so to me, it's very spiritual. It's very demonic. Anything that's taking over you. And I always tell people, and for me, when people are like, oh, I have 1 or 2, I never understood that. Because to me, like, if I'm going to have 1 or 2 and not really get like a buzz or a drink, I'm like, I'm not going to take them calories. I'm going to go get like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, something that's different.
You know, there's people that are believers
yeah.
that say they just have 1 or 2 drinks. And I'm like, I've never drank in my whole life.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
And I love that, dude.
My wife, she's an alcoholic. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm no Melissa. You better get up in here and check your man.
When she was younger, she used to drink.
Yeah.
But I've never drank. But I always, when believers say that, I'm like, so why do you drink then?
Yeah.
Like, I just drink just to, you know, I go, because you get a little buzzed. I already know. Maybe you don't drink to get drunk, but you get buzzed. So something's going on there. You're opening up a door, right? And I go, I don't. You know, especially now, I'm like, oh, you don't ever drink? No, I never drank. And I go, I'm so afraid to even touch a drink now because I'm like, I might like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And then get pulled down the rabbit hole. And, right? And open a door that I don't want to open. And that's what I tell my kids. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, it's your choice because you're adults now. And I hope that you don't because you love Jesus. But if you open that door, you don't know where you're going.
Well, I look at it like this. The Bible says that we're not fighting a flesh and blood, but this is a spiritual warfare. That's biblical. It says it right there in the Bible. So if you got an enemy who's roaring around like a lion, not a lion, but like one, or like a hyena, but like, you know, he's looking for that. I do not want to give him an inch. I do not want to give him any type of hold on me and anything that is taking your senses off, right?
Right.
You're vulnerable. You're vulnerable to that in every level, right? Like to me as a Christian, you're already walking in a sense, especially depending on where you are with your walk. Nowadays it's not as bad, but when I first started, I was like sipping on Similac. I was a baby. And so, because I didn't know anything of that nature. And so for me, it felt like a struggle every single day. So yeah, if you put something that kind of dropped my guard.
Yeah.
Dude, you might as well like leave my door unlocked. You know what I mean? Like that's just how I look at it. Like that.
I read this book. It's over there somewhere. It's Lou Giglio. Don't give the enemy a seat at your table.
There you go.
And that's all he talks about. And it can be from the simplest thing as, you know, letting thoughts come into your mind. Yeah. And then he's like, you let the thoughts come in, and he basically is saying this. You and Jesus are sitting at a table, ready to have this great meal. Yeah, and it's just you and Jesus, and you're there eating, and the devil's kind of like roaming, maybe outside a little bit, right? Yeah. Looking in through the window, and then all of a sudden he kind of makes his way in, and he still can't sit at the table. He can't not sit there and eat with you guys.
Yeah.
But he's roaming around, and he's trying to distract you, and you get a little distracted, and then you start to compromise, and he sits down, and then you're like, oh, hey, and you're still eating, and then before long you start paying attention to him, and it ruins this relationship right here, and all of a sudden he's sitting there. So he's like, do not give the enemy a seat at your table, and it can be from the simplest things of thoughts. I mean, we talked about social media, things like that, or it can be a drink here or there, anything that's going to hinder you, basically, and give the enemy an open door. I tell people that all the time, like, you can't let him have an open door. I mean, it can be anything, you know what I mean? But we do that. And
it's so true with that you said that, and I like what you said in the beginning when you were like, what is it that you're trying to get relief from? Yeah. Because that's another thing, the way I look at it, I go, the way I look at my life, I always say, I want to get rid of it's the distractions. If there's something, and I even tell God, if it's too much TV or certain things, I go, God, I'm clearly running from you because I need relief from some way from you, and I'm not going to you for it when you're the only one that can break me through that.
It's so funny how that works. Huh?
You're the only one that can break me through. And a lot of times, and I think it's even been spoken on this podcast, it's like, depending on your relationship with your parents, your family, or honestly any authority figures, it's always going to get projected on God. So for me, my prayers a lot with God was I knew him and knew of him, but I was like, help me accept your love. I did not know how. I was like a hardened sponge that I saw the water all around me, but it was hard for me to absorb it, right, and hold on to it. And so I feel like when you got an issue like that where you're like, man, you don't understand my days. I'm like, dude, my job is I run a whole building. Like, it is a very stressful job at times. I go to school. You know what I mean? I have a lot of different things going on, the type of ministry I do. So but I know if I'm not having relief in the Lord, God's like, Lindsay, he's trying to break me through, right? A lot of people don't realize the breaking point is actually where the breakthrough is around the corner. But if we keep postponing that breakthrough through different numbers, and numbers could be anything from food to drink to, whatever it is, TV, social media, whatever it is. You're basically saying, no, I'm not trying to, I'm just putting a pause right here. Right. But then they're wondering, why don't I feel filled? Why do I feel this? Why do I feel, and you're like, look, the Bible says you reap what you sow, right? It's not a work of acts, it's not about our works, but at the same time, faith without works is dead. God is a participating God. He is saying, he's like, I'm not a genie that's just going to poof and give you the hot dog that you're begging for. You need to get your butt up and go make it in the kitchen.
It's reciprocating.
It's a relationship.
I wanted to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Elevate Ministries. Elevate Ministries is an authentic, passionate, and innovative church in the heart of Orange County, California. They strive to make their services welcoming and encouraging by intentionally engaging you in all senses to stimulate a spiritual hunger. If you're looking for a great church that's on a mission to change the world one person at a time, I encourage you to check them out at www.elevateministries.com and on Instagram at Elevate Ministries. Yeah, I think that's big. I think what you said a little while ago about how you perceive God, I think that's what you were getting at, right? I mentioned that the other day.
Yeah.
So I was preaching at church, Father's Day.
Dude, legit, by the way. You did legit. That was good.
Praise God. Yeah. But I did mention that. And the perception that we get of God is sometimes based on the way we perceive our parents, right? Or the way they treated us. So if your parents were neglectful, if maybe your father was mean or looked at you a certain way, sometimes we take those projections of our parents and we project it on Christ, and we think that's the way he looks at us. Exactly. I mean, that was huge. Me and Melissa talked about that, and I added that at the end of that sermon because I was like, that makes so much sense, because sometimes you feel like my dad treated me this way, my heavenly dad is probably looking at me the same way. Are they angry at me for every little thing or this or that? But that's huge.
Yeah. And I 100% agree. When you said that, I was like, oh, I know that was from the Holy Spirit. You could tell that had an impact. And even just from people I talked to after that was saying, oh, that got me. That part.
I seen men come down, what I mean? And I knew it was a powerful thing. And I added it like 2 or 3 days before.
Okay.
Because me and Melissa talked about it, and she was just like, you know what, like that really made sense to me. Like, and she shared with me, and I was like, yo, and I go, there is probably a lot of people that feel it. And I, you know, it was for fathers. It was Father's Day.
Yeah.
But I felt like, no, this is something that needs to be said because I think it could affect everybody's perception of their Heavenly Father.
For sure. And not only in their walk in their relationship, I think when you come in, depending on your background, and I don't care if you've been raised in church or completely never walked in the building, I heard somebody say, whatever you diagnose is how you're going to treat. Right. So to me, I look at it like if I'm not understanding, okay, this is a me thing, meaning I'm just looking, it's not a him thing. God loves me and he does not change. Biblically, it says that he does not change. It makes me realize, okay, it might take some time, and that's okay. I think about your marriage with Melissa. What, 29 years coming up? You said September? Or?
Yes, 29 years.
That's legit, but that took
30 years in Attica. No, I'm just kidding.
But that took time. That took work. That took, you know what I mean? So to me, I think when you have it like that, it gives you a breather. Because I know for me, when I first came to church, I thought I was failing. If I'm going to be honest with you, I remember looking around, everyone looked happy. I'm like, man, they just get it. That's the perception you have. You're like, they just get it. And the lies I used to get told was, see, you're not his kid. You're not, you know what I mean? Like, I literally could like audibly hear it. And so for me, I always had a struggle, but the way I was, this is where my fight was, I was sticking it to you know who, because I was like, nope, I'm going to still show up. Nope, I'm going to still serve. Nope. I mean, people don't realize how hard it was sometimes to get me just to that Sunday. But I understood no matter what, it wasn't a God thing. It was a me thing that's just learning how to accept his love. And that was going to take time and daily encounters with him on an effort to effort basis. So I think that was huge when you said that, because I think people sometimes beat themselves up of like, man, I'm failing at this and God just doesn't love me, or he's not going to have patience with me, and they just want to dip because of that. And you're like, no, dude, he gave his life for you. He gave his son for you. Are you kidding me? You know what I mean? Like, right. And that's what they have to realize. You go, it just take time. It's almost like you were an abused dog that got kicked a bunch of times. Like, you know what I mean? You're just going back to realizing it's safe.
That's one thing about when you come to God. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
Everybody's, we're all in the race.
Yeah.
Some of us are starting with a little bit more hang-ups. Some of us, I always say this, like the analogy of we're all in the race. We're all running together, but there might be somebody that might have a little bit of a head start because maybe they're third generation of believers, coming, and then you might have somebody that just, like you said, they just get it. You might have somebody that struggles with still things, but there's always something. And I think once you get past that, like, you're like, okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm part of this, How did you eventually come to the Lord?
So God is funny in this way. Anybody that has ever helped me, Rachel, I am saying this because I'm talking about somebody who has more like a spiritual authority to me.
I'm glad Rachel did something good in the church for once.
Yeah. Like this one she has a resume out to here. I go, this woman just is
watch Rachel on the podcast.
Dude,
Great story. She I don't know what number, can't find out what number she was. Episode she was.
She's amazing because
Rachel,
what she has gone through, she did not let her trials go to waste, right? Her trials are her testimonies. And for me, I'm a stubborn mule. I'm a little donkey. I make fun of myself. I'm stubborn. Why? Because I have massive trust issues for obvious reasons. So the way God was with me, he was like, okay, girl, I'm going to have to, God's a fisherman of men. He knows what bait to use with me. So he had to do little breadcrumbs. So for me, I think it was when I was 28, like I said.
Episode 41, Rachel.
There we go. I had to do breadcrumbs, meaning when I was 28, it was getting to the place where I literally felt like I was going insane. Mind you, I've been arrested, almost died multiple times, ripped IVs out of I have crazy, crazy stories of where
so it got worse.
Oh, on an epic proportion to where... And I always say this, and people could say whatever, but for me, just like I heard that spirit, I've audibly heard God before. He's literally taken me out of a blackout situation that I probably would have died. Literally was walking towards an alley at 2 and 3 in the morning, hammered by myself. I was young. I thought I was going to the bar. I didn't realize where I was walking to. I was in a blackout state. Woke up like this. I heard Lindsay, like a loud, audible, firm voice. And it was like, Lindsay. And I was right under a street light. And he goes, look, turn around. And it just hit me cognitively. And I just remember booking it, and I blacked out again. And then I woke up in the hospital, and they were like, hey, we found you in an elevator. I made it back to my hotel, but not all the way up. And they were like, you had a 4.0 alcohol poisoning. It's like
wait. 4.0?
Oh, when I tell you that the doctors have told me I should have died multiple, 40% of people, for people that don't know any of this, 0.8 is the legal limit.
Yes.
So I was 4.0. That is like 4.
I watch Cops.
Yeah.
Okay, so when they say like 1.6, I'm like,
Bro.
oh, they're really drunk.
Oh, dude.
4?
And I was at the time 5'5", and at the time I was like $128, and they were like, dude,
what are you drinking?
It was anything. And that's how I also knew it was a spirit. Dude, there was nothing that was I could never stop. Like once I started, could never stop. And so, and that was just one of the occasions. But long story short, so I had a couple of those episodes, and I'm talking, dude, I woke up the next day and they were like looking at me like, you think your life would change or you'd go to rehab. Bro, I thought I was Jason Bourne. I literally ripped my IVs out, snatched up my stuff, and like took a cab back to the hotel and got hammered that day.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
So you're drunk in the alley.
Yeah.
You hear a voice.
Yeah. It wakes me up within
Audible voice.
It like sobers me to like make the turn.
You make it back to,
and then I go right back into the state of
wake up in the hospital.
Yeah.
And then you rip out the IVs, and then you go back and get drunk. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Because I could not, and then I went to work that Monday. Dude, like I'm telling you, when I say I should not be in, like I could have died multiple times. They found me, and I was like Jane Doe, dude. They would just find me places because I would black out and just be done.
Did you want to die?
To be honest, probably. Yeah, I think a lot of times I did, and it's funny you asked me that because that was actually one of the things that got me to sober up. Was I wasn't dying, but I was living miserable, which I was more scared of that than dying. And I remember me and good old Pops. That's what I call my dad's Pop. Me and Pops. We went to Subway because he would take me every Monday to go have lunch or whatever. I had a bender. I was 28 years old. I looked like crap. I had a bender. My ex and me it was just a whole thing. Dude, they kicked me off my cell phone insurance because I kept losing my cell phone, breaking it from being such a drunk. So it was really bad. So long story short, I remember he looked at me and he goes, you need help. Like I couldn't fake it. That was the one day because I hid a lot of this from my dad. I didn't want my dad seeing that side of me, and I think for him, he was every other weekend, and then he picked me up on Mondays, and he found my cigarettes at 13, and I said it wasn't friends. He didn't want to believe they were mine. My pops was just like that. So long story short, he goes, you need help. And I was so pissed because I'm like, yeah, no, I had a mouth on me. I was like, yeah, but like, what is that going to do? Like I really didn't believe that there was help for me, if I'm going to be honest. I genuinely felt hopeless at that point. And he goes, give me your insurance. I knew that was God because my father has carried cash his entire life. This dude is old school. How he texted me is he would write a message and take a picture of it and send the picture because he learned how to do that. My dad does not do these kind of things. And so when he said insurance, I'm like, do you even know like what that is? I was like, and so I was like a little smart. You know what? I was like, all right, I'll try you. So I threw my insurance. He called me up a week later, and I was living in Whittier at the time with my ex, and he was like, I got you a therapist. You're seeing her this Wednesday. I interviewed for her. And I was growing, by the way. I was 28.
Oh, wow.
And I remember fighting it all the way, but I was desperate. If I'm going to keep it real, I was desperate. And I remember all the way up to that door, I was like, what is she going to tell me? I know everything, blah, blah, blah. All my defenses came up. Bro, it took her she looked like a kindergarten teacher, by the way. I always say, Jenny, she was my first angel that God sent me. God used her to save my life. Literally all she did was say, why are you here? And it was the first time, Dave, somebody actually asked me how I was doing.
Wow.
And I just remember vomiting all my testimony and my stuff. And she basically said, she goes, I think I can help you. And I couldn't afford her at the time because, I was financially completely on my own, And she goes, how much can you afford? And I gave her a number, and she was in the like triple digits. And I was like in the like lower digits. She goes, I'll hook it up. Meaning she wasn't trying to see me for the money.
She believed in you.
Oh, she believed in me, dude. And I remember the first time she talked about a 12-step program, I flipped out on her. I was like, that's not why I'm here. I blamed everything oh, it's because of my ex, it's because of finances. I blamed everything, and that's why you see me now in my walk. I will not rationalize. I am not perfect. I can, you know what I mean? But accountability is huge to me. You cannot be in my inner circle. I'm not trying. If you are not accountable, that's a flag for me.
And accountability in programs is huge, right?
Oh, it's
everything.
And that's what it taught me, because I rationalized so much, and Satan was just having a field day with that, because I never came to repentance. I never came to help. The pride was just like living on me. And
I have a hard time with people that don't have accountability either.
Because I'm thinking, if you can't even are you accountable to God? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just kind of like, none of us are perfect. We have to understand that we got to come to that, because why? It gives us repentance. And it helps us grow. And then it teaches us grace. And then we give grace not only to ourselves, but others. So it's such a big part of that, in my opinion. And I had to learn it. So I give grace to people that don't have it. I understand that it takes time. But as far as my everyday, I'm like, oh no, accountability is huge. And so I remember I rationalized, and this is how God rolled with me. He was like, everything you blamed, I'm going to hook up. So ex left, moved out of our pad, saved up a gang of money. I
would have moved too if you're beating me up.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
He's like, girl. But the sick thing is, he didn't want me to move. The only reason why for this, I asked him, I go, do you want to go on this journey with me? And to his credit, he was true to himself. He goes, no. He liked what he was doing. And but we loved each other. I mean, we cried. We didn't have like a bad break. We literally were like two little kids crying. I felt like I was abandoning him, to be honest with you. And my therapist was like, dude, he's a grown man.
Because he wanted to stay.
He thought he was saving up.
I mean, like you said, props to him for releasing you.
Oh, because we had that
you can
talk.
pull somebody back in.
Oh, well, I used to tell him, don't propose to me, because we used to talk about that. I go, I'll say no. And that's weird for most women, don't they? But since I was a little girl, I go, I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have kids. I said that as a young age. It wasn't until I got saved that I started opening up to that concept. But it was the letting go of that codependent, circumstance. And he wasn't a bad dude. It's just, we were both lost kids, if I'm going to be honest with you. And we just bonded off the wrong stuff. And so when I left, all those excuses went away. I mean, from finances to this to that, and my drinking increased. And when I lived with my mom, I had to hide it now. So now I'm drinking 2 to 3 bottles when she goes to bed. I have a full-on routine. Put it in a garbage bag, throw it under my bed so I can take it to the outside. I mean, it was like...
This is like an episode of Intervention.
Oh, man. Welcome to 71 on this one. But it was really bad. And I literally felt like I was going insane. And so I had another bender, and now it's seeping into my job. The one place that always gave me self-esteem, right? And that scared me. And I remember my therapist goes, Lindsay, you need to understand you're not living, you're dying. I don't know why that simple sentence to me did something. The Holy Spirit was like, just opened my eyes. And I remember looking outside, and she goes, how about the 12-step program? And I remember tears running down my face. And I go, that's how I knew I was full of it, because I was like, I'll never drink at my wedding, even though I was like, I didn't want to get married. So my head went there. But I understood that the gig was up, and I could not control it. And so I said yes. And she did things that were so unorthodox. This woman, I'm telling you, God sent her. She's a Christian therapist too. So we talked about Jesus and all that. And she was the first one to walk me into the program.
Wow.
She was the first one to say, hey, what about going back to school and sign me up for college? I mean, she literally did things that no one has ever done for me. And then when I went into the 12-step program, I think in my head, God had me do that because it taught me so much discipline. I lived this undisciplined life by my rules, and then it went from like, oh no, you need to be a woman of your word, all this stuff. So I go into all of that, and then I remember I was like 10 months into my sobriety. Again, I'm being a little stubborn donkey. I didn't want to do the program. Shocker. So I was in this dry land, and for us, it's a valley, right? I didn't get relief from the program, and I wasn't going back to drinking. And at this point, and which is funny because God actually supernaturally delivered me from the obsession. So I was 3 months.
The obsession of drinking?
Oh, for sure. So I was 3 months sober, and it was to the point where I had to lock myself in my bedroom after work so that I wouldn't go out. So it was like meetings, work, home. And I remember my mom tried taking me out for a birthday to like this nice lunch at the beach, and I had a meltdown there, not expecting it. I didn't realize how many triggers I had. And I remember I asked her, I go, what do you see when you're here? And she's like, oh, the beautiful waves. I named every booze. I go, I'm clocking the 2 tables down, the bar that's about. I just started clocking everything. And I remember smoking a pack of cigarettes, talking to my sponsor for like an hour while at this beautiful restaurant that I could not enjoy. And I'll never forget this older Christian woman. I'll never say her name out of, for obvious reasons. And she came up to me at a meeting and she goes, honey, have you ever asked God to remove the obsession? And I thought that was the dumbest thing. Not that she said that, but I'm like, well, doesn't he know? Like, what am I doing here? You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what are we doing over here? Like, what?
He knows everything. Why do I have to ask him for it?
Well, not only that, I'm like, there's nothing humbling than standing up and saying, hi, my name is Lindsay, to a group of strangers. So my point is, I remember it got so bad in my 3rd month. I remember I was like, I'm going to relapse. It was to the point I was like almost scratching at my door. And I remember I closed the door after she said that to me. And I didn't even realize I was rebuking at the time. I'm talking mocos, eyes for like an hour and a half, pleading with God, saying, if you don't deliver me, I'm going out right now and I will probably die. So those are your options for me. And I remember passing out because I was so tired after a while, and the next day it was gone. It lifted right up for
Instantly.
me. Instant. The next day. He did the same thing with cigarettes. I smoked almost a pack a day for 20 years, on and off. And literally, I remember when I was getting heart palpitations. I always say this, God can do anything. It's not a God issue, because people are like, oh, I've been praying. I can smell in 2 seconds when someone's actually not ready to let it go. If I'm honest with myself, anything I had issues with, it was because I didn't want to let it go. That was my first mom and dad. Wow. That was my first comfort. How could I let that armor go? When I was young, I learned how to put capes and costumes, right? My rage was one of them. My anger was one of them. God did this every time, but he read my heart. He didn't hear my mouth. He read my heart. He goes, oh no, she's really done. It was the same with rage. I was already saved, and I was about to go fight somebody. Literally gearing up in my head. I knew where she lived. I had the whole 9 yards. Delivered me from the rage right there. I dropped middle of my shower. Like, God is ready. God's always ready. It's
us, right?
It's 100% us. So
that makes so much sense to me, because I had a guy, it was today, and he's had problems, and he'll reach out every now and then.
Yeah.
Right, and we're friends. We have some mutual friends, but we're friends over social media.
Yeah.
And he's telling me about these issues he's having again, and then he says, I cried out to God, and you want to say, like, listen,
yeah.
You told me that last time,
yeah,
and you told me that the time before,
yeah.
Something's not changing in you,
yeah.
You're crying out to God in the moment,
yeah,
right? But you're not doing no changes,
yeah.
You're really not done.
There's no transformation.
You're done today because your day sucked. Whatever, these XYZ things happen to you, right? And so I almost want to tell him, like, dude, like, you cried out to God, but it was not true. It wasn't from your heart. It was from your mind, and it was from the circumstance of the problems you're going through right now. But you're not 100% surrendering.
And there's a way to pivot that question, because I do that with a lot of people, to be honest with you. And I always ask them, I go, what are you afraid of? That's what I always ask them. And you can tell it hits them. They go, what do you mean? I go, you're giving it to God like this. You're doing it with the closed fist. God's saying no. God, you know what I mean? Like, you got to open that up. I go, but, and that's why I said accountability. That's kind of where I was kind of going with accountability. That's how you grow. If I can't even be honest to the fact that I'm holding on to something, I'm going to hold on to that forever. So to me, I always tell people, you don't need to be honest to me. I'm nobody. I'm literally nobody. Do me a solid, be honest to yourself and God. Those are the two people. If you could do those two things, and anybody, and I go, close your door. You don't have to do it in front of the world. I'm saying just keep it real. Keep it real. And I had to keep it real. Dude, I smoked for 2 years almost in the church, and I was struggling with that, cigarettes. Like, I mean, my mouth, oh my God, cussing in my family, by the way, my grandma, if you ask her what her favorite word is, it's the F word. You know what I mean? Like, so I tell people, and they're like, oh, language, I go, dude, that'd be like telling someone who spoke Spanish, don't speak Spanish no more. You know what I mean? Like, that was just part of my vocabulary. Like, I didn't realize it was even a thing until I started coming to church, or getting in trouble with my HR. So like, so point being, I had all that. And then, you know, I'm in the program or whatever. And it's like I'm 10 months sober. Now, mind you, at this point of my journey, if you will, I remember a woman, I'm going to give her a shout out, Valerie. She already knows who she is, my Val. She's the reason I'm even at, God used her to come to Praise Chapel. She worked with me. She was like my first kind of mom at work. And she was from Paramount. She knew like, you know, where my dad's neighborhood was. And so she kind of took me under her wing when I used to get a little psycho. And so, because I'd be in business in boardrooms. I was the only female, youngest one. These two guys would be like yelling at me and they think I'd be crying. It just pissed me off even more. And I'd be like, rah, you know, so she'd be like, all right, Mia, come here, you know. And so I remember she gave me a flyer. I was 6 months. Never sleep on those flyers. I want to make that very clear. Never sleep on these flyers. She took me out to lunch and she goes, Mia, I come from a Catholic background. In my eyes, I'm like, I didn't come to the Catholics. We were, because I'm Mexican Italian. You had a kegger after your baptism, right? This was not like a practicing thing. It was like, hey, I'm feeling real bad. Right. I'm going to, you know, put $5 in the collection, get 3 back, you know, and we're out for donuts. Like that was the deal. So when she slipped me this flyer, she goes, I go to this church, Praise Chapel. It's nothing like I've ever experienced. I love it. She was going for like 4 years prior. And I normally would like chuck those things, but because it was her, I love her, I threw it in my wallet. And I remember at a month prior to, so I was 9 months, God gave me a calling. I was at a company that I was getting groomed to be a VP of operations. And I'm not saying that to like, oh, look at me or da-da-da. Again, God always blessed me with business for whatever reason. I was a hard worker and I understood stuff on that end. And CEO sat me down and was like, you and my son are going to run it. I mean, I had a whole future lined up. They go, you just got to tell us, you want to go to ops, you want to go to sales, like where you want to go. So I had like somebody from my background who had no prospects. No one was really looking out for me. I got to this job through a temp agency. Wow. That's another thing too. When people tell me I have struggles, I go, I used to move boxes for one day and I spent my gas money on it. I go, but I had to go through different temps to where I found this one and it ended up giving me it was my college, if I'm going to be honest with you, a set of skills I never knew. And so I had this all set and boom, I get the calling. I was like 9 months at the time sober. And God was like, you're going to help people and you're going to go get your PhD because I want.
So this is before going to church or anything like that? Before
going to church.
You already felt that?
I already felt, because I always prayed to Jesus. That to me was not an issue. And so I remember when he said that, he goes, and I want you to get a PhD because you need to learn everything that the world is going to learn so that you can say, yeah, it's like the Apostle Paul. I love it when he says, he's like, oh, yeah, I was you in Galatians. I was you plus some. All men. I was you plus some. And he goes, and he's basically saying you're still wrong. And so God was kind of, I love when he said, like, he's going to make man's wisdom foolish, right? And it's basically to showcase. And so when I heard that, I'm like, dude, and mind you, I didn't read a book till I was 30 because I just cheated my whole way through I went to summer schools just to get to the next level. So for me, that was huge to say, I'm going to quit this job that's literally making good money. Because I was a single mom, so I was taught, don't depend on a man, you know, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I had no credit cards. I didn't even own a credit card. You know, I was just very like that. So I paid my car off in 3 years. You know, I was very like that, but everywhere else I was a mess. And so long story short, I leave the job. Felt like I was going through detox because I was so attached to that stressful life. I'm washing dishes, going through episode of depression once again, and I hear a calling to read the Bible. And mind you, I was brought into the word before I was brought into church, and I thought in my head, I go, you are tripping. There's no way you're calling me to read this Bible because I don't even own a Bible. I think I had like a Motel Gideon Bible. You know what I mean? Like those maroon bad boys that I couldn't even read. And I remember watching a movie that they showed that they had a Bible app. That's how I knew there was a Bible app, by the way, because again, no social media, none of that. I'm like old school on this end. I get the Bible app, and before I even did that, I was thinking, no, I'm tripping. Tried eating food. No satisfaction, movie, nothing. People don't realize if God's calling you to something and you don't do it, best believe you are not going to get your peace until you do what he calls you. At least that's how he was with me. He was like, try doing all I just felt uneasy. And so I was like, fine, I'll do it. Downloaded the app. I was reading 9 to 10 chapters a day. I could not put it down. I was pissed. I didn't know what I was reading. I was a woman in Genesis. I was like, with no discipleship. I had no clue, but I couldn't stop eating it. I couldn't stop. So I did that for a month, and then 10 months in, it was Easter Sunday. So Easter Sunday was my 7 years at our church, and so I was Easter Sunday, and I remember having the biggest pity party, man, with balloons and everything, because for whatever reason, that holiday, which we normally spend as a family, everyone dispersed. I don't know why. I was by myself. And I was having a pity party 1, and I was like, is this why you got me sober, just to sit by myself? And I can hear God say, he goes, open your wallet. Or no, I said, what's today? And I'm like, Easter. He's like, well, you've been studying the Bible. Where would you go if you're studying a book? I go, school. He goes, what school for the Bible? I go, church. I don't have a church. He goes, look in your wallet. I forgot about the flyer. I actually had 2 flyers in my wallet, one for Raul Reese's church and one for ours. And I almost feel like it was a prophetic thing, because my mom, the one who, and that's another story, she had a hard time when I was first going to church. It was not a supportive thing. Fast forward, I actually was the one that gave my mom the salvation prayer. So people that are struggling in that, keep faith, keep walking by example. Don't talk about it, walk it. But my point is, that's the church she goes to. Is that, so it was almost like God showing me, like, not just you, but also your mother. And so
wow.
I pray over this thing. I didn't want to go. I had no makeup on. I had no interest in church or church people, because just like anybody else, I thought everyone was hypocritical. I wasn't raised around it. I drive up, all sourpuss, like all sad and mad. And I will never forget seeing these young kids on the corner with the signs, bro, saying, welcome to church. And immediately that did something to me, because I remember I was doing blow at 17. So to me, I'm like, I was slanging out of our house at 19. So I was like, yeah, I remember what I was doing at your age, and it wasn't that. And I so respected that. You couldn't have paid me to do that, actually. So that alone was that. Then I get in parking attendants. I'm actually hooking up every single man. I'm going to give them a shout. Parking attendants. VIP spot, dude. I felt like VI. As soon as I drove up, I'm trying to figure out where I'm even going. I don't know if they could smell I was new, but they straight up gave me a parking spot, like almost right in the front. And I'm like, what's up with these people, man? They're like super nice. They're either super fake or something.
This sounds like a great Yelp review.
Oh, dude, I'm not playing. And then I get out of my car. First person I see as a greeter was my best friend, Betty. So I didn't know Betty, and she's greeting me as if we've known each other for 20 years, like hand signs and everything. I'm flipping out because I'm a blackout. So I'm like, oh my God, I partied with this chick. That's my first thought. So I'm like, how do I know you? How do I know you? How do I know you? And then she goes, hi, my name is Betty. What's yours? I'm like, oh, praise Jesus, you don't know me. I'm like, and it kind of took off from there. And I remember she's like, hey, where are you sitting? I'm like, no, I'm straight, dude. I'm just going to be in the back. And she's like, no, I got you. I'm like, oh, I can't shake this chick. And so I sit to the back, Sinner's Row, right there in the back on the left corner. And I remember Jen Gutierrez and Adrian, on different occasions, they came up and introduced. And I was kind to them. I wasn't like mean or anything. But as soon as they walked away, that was kindness for no reason that I didn't understand.
Were you weary of that?
Oh, for sure.
I
used to, dude, I sized up every room I went into, including the Salvation Room. That's a little confession right there. Because that was where, know. And so when they walked away, I just remember and mind you, when I got to church, I could not say Jesus' name out loud, which is crazy that he gave me these callings and all this stuff. And Rachel laughed. She goes, girl, you were the woman with 7 demons. Like she said that to me, and I started laughing because I do believe I had a spirit on me that hated worship, because I remember the worship team coming up, and you already know, Brandon, they're amazing, like straight up gifted, anointed from God. But I couldn't stand it. Literally couldn't. I literally heard voices saying, look how fake everybody is. They're not real. They're not really worshiping. And God delivered me on the spot. He goes, at least they can say my name. Boom, deliverance right there on the chair. And I remember putting my head in my lap, and I just started weeping and me crying in public, mind you, did not happen. So, I just have tons of those experiences. And so, long story short, I did not get saved my first round, the first day there, because of my pride. I didn't want to raise
you're still fighting.
Did not want to raise my hand, bro. I was still fighting. And Betty was like, can we go to lunch? I was like, nah, I'm good. And I literally rolled out, and she was like, dang. She's like, well, can I see you next week? And I remember in my program, if you were going to say, because they're trying to teach you to be integrity, meaning do what you say, you can't back out. I said it to be polite, and I was going to flake, but then I was like, oh, I felt immediate conviction. I always tell Betty, girl, God has a hand on you, because anytime I felt a certain way, he was like, not her. And so I remember I showed up the second time purely out of just, I wanted to be a woman of my word, because that's what my program tells me to do.
Hey, awesome.
They did a salvation crawl. I'm not even kidding. It felt like someone grabbed my elbow. No one was there. Someone grabbed my elbow and lifted my hand. And I was literally shaking. And then when they were like, stand up, I go, oh, you ain't getting me to do that. That hand's one thing. You ain't getting me to stand. And it felt like somebody was going like this to my two elbows and stood me up. And I remember I went in to the altar call, and Pastor Carl was the one that gave me the salvation prayer. And I remember going into the salvation room, and my tears dried up like this, because immediately now I'm in a room full of people I don't know. I'm sizing everybody up. I'm looking at my exit, and they were asking me to fill out something, and I didn't understand any of this, right? I didn't understand what just happened. And I remember there was a woman weeping, and all I can say was, I'm filling it out bitter. I was like, good for you. At least you can cry. I'm like, I can't even cry right now. I'm like, all right, so I'm just filling it out saying, get out of this room. And I remember she goes, I don't have my address because I'm in a rehab. And God goes, you don't know this, but you know that. Go hug her. I go, you ain't getting me to hug her. Well, she swings on me and we start fighting right here in the salvation room. I ain't trying to do all that. So I was like, nope. And I was like, I slid the thing. Dude, say this is her. I'm walking right here. This is how, look at Apostle Paul says, do you want the rod or do you want the love? And sometimes God gave me the rod because that's how I'd listen. I went almost like right past her, and he goes, you better do it, because I ain't going to give you peace. If not, and I just turned around, I threw my arms around her, and I go, I'm 10 months, you can do it. And I just started rapping with her right there. And I remember the person that was running the room at the time, he came after me, and he goes, I had so much arrogance because of my pride and my fear. It all stems from fear. But I had such an arrogance to me of like a wall of like, I told him, I go, oh, you don't know what I just did. You don't know nothing about that. And he goes, try me. I'm 16 years. And I was like, I was like, all right. And that's when he told me, he goes, look around. Everyone looks cleaned up. He goes, you have no clue the walks that are coming in here. And then it was like, boom, for me. And I knew immediately that was my room. Because I remember I was like struggling in that room. And I remember I was criticizing it as I walked away. And God goes, stop criticizing and do something about it. And that was always my walk. He's like, and I always tell people that will come to me and be like, oh, I go, no. That's a calling then. Do something about it. Don't just sit there and arrogantly criticize something, one, you don't really know about. You're only making judgments off certain things that, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I go, and that's what I meant about accountability. Trust me, I'm very hard on I check myself probably more than anybody really understands. Because I'm always checking my motives. I'm always checking my heart. Okay, what was that? Why? Because I did not come in this church to social climb. I honestly didn't even want to be social at all with anybody. I came here like a college. I'm reading the Bible, don't know what I'm doing. I want to understand what I'm reading, period. That was what I did. And God was like, yeah, no. And so, but it was serving. They did the 180 class at the time. And I remember because of my program, I'm like, you don't just take, you contribute. And so I just served to get out of my head. Do you need me to stack chairs, a booth? What do you need me to do? I was just like, I'm down. And that's how I started making friendships.
Wow.
That's how I started making friendships. I remember Mark Eileen is because why I was with Eileen at the, you know what I mean? I started making friendships. Courtney, we went on a camping trip that Betty planned, and 7 hours later, we're best friends and worshiping and crying on the way down to the mountain. You know what I mean? God, I was not looking to stay in that way. I was not looking for the Christian, whatever this was. All I knew is that year I read the Bible from Genesis to Revelations, because he goes, you're going to start in Genesis because you're not going to appreciate what I did if you don't know where you came from. And so I remember doing that, and then I got into deep dives with it, right? And then when I got hooked up with Betty, that was just another level, because she definitely has the gift of teaching. And we would just meet up and nerd out on a Friday night. And I remember laughing because Fridays and Saturdays were triggers for me because of my past. And we would be studying the Bible, no joke. Sometimes half a chapter, 7 hours. 7 hours at a restaurant, just geeking out over the word. And then it was kind of a wrap from there. We now have a Bible study.
I wouldn't normally believe that.
Yeah.
But since you had my wife for about 5.5,
He goes,
And it didn't involve the word?
Yeah, dude. He goes, can you imagine? I mean, our Bible study now, we did 2 hours just on one verse in 1 John. I mean, people don't realize. I go, this is not.
And don't you work that room now?
Huh? Yeah. So I mean, I'm one of many. So
Yeah,
I'm one of many.
But you're in that room now.
I've been in that room for all 7 years that I've been at this church. I've had like 2 or 3 different male like leaders in there, but for me, I've been in there for 7 years. And I remember that was a big deal because they normally don't let somebody that's like fresh off the gate. And I remember they were like, you need to meet with Ella. That's why Ella always has a special place in my heart. She was my first ministry leader. I love you, Ella. She was my first ministry leader. We went to Starbucks 3 hours later. She was,
I saved Ella.
nah.
Yeah.
Like physically, like.
Yeah.
No
Her-
way.
Last year.
Last year?
Yeah. She would have been dead.
Do you mind if I ask that? Like, just do a quick pause?
Yeah. I'm gonna brag about myself.
Let
here.
me
Ella got
hear
brought
that.
up here.
Let me hear.
So we went to the river last year.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you go Parker or Havasu?
Went to Havasu.
Okay.
So we're out there. I'm swimming. It's cool.
Yeah.
And Selena, the youngest daughter, loses her slipper or water shoe, whatever.
Yeah.
And we were on this part where it was maybe 3 feet deep, and all of a sudden it falls off a cliff.
Oh, yeah.
So she goes down, and I'm like, wait, what's happening? Because I wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
And then Ella goes after her, but tries to save the shoe at the same time. So now they're
She's multitasking.
now they're both drowning. And she's like, help. And I'm like, oh my God. So I go over there, I swim, and I'm like, please don't push me down. Like, I'm going to help you, but let's stay up together.
Yeah.
You get Selena, I push her. She has like a little vest on, so I push her that way because the current was taking her.
Yeah.
And Ella's trying to, she's panicking. So I get her, and I push her, and I'm looking, and Joey's on the boat, her husband, everybody. And he has his hands crossed, and he's shaking his head. And I'm like, bro, I'm dying trying to save.
You're like, I'm like Mitch Buchanan over here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
some people stand in the darkness, right? And I'm like, yo. So I push her.
Yeah.
So then I think Pastor Adam comes, and he's grabbing her to pull her over too. Yeah. And then I'm just exhausted by this time, and I'm like, throw me something.
Yeah.
I'm still having to swim. I'm not.
Which, by the way, people don't realize that's how people, even if they're good swimmers, drowned.
Yes.
Is literally that what you just said.
So So I remind her every once in a while.
He was like this. So Ella, you're welcome. He's like
Selena always looks at me with a great smile, and she's just always very grateful. But
dude, I love that family.
they're great.
And Ella, like always.
That was a side story here.
No, that's legit, dude. Mitch Buchanan right here, dude. That's legit.
I used to be Hobie, but now Mitch.
I stepped it up. I leveled up. Me, I'm like too lazy to get in that water. I'm like, nah, I'm gonna be on this.
I don't think they'll get it again. You know what the funny part about that?
Yeah.
So I'm pushing them.
Yeah.
Melissa's in the boat next to Joey.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to help them, right? Melissa's reaching down, putting on her life jacket. She's standing in the boat.
She's like, you got this, babe.
She's like shaking her head. She's like, oh, heck no.
She's like,
she's buttoning it up, and
she's like, you got this.
I was like, why are you putting on life jacket? So I seen everybody drowning.
She goes, you ain't getting me to drown today. She goes, in the name of Jesus.
I was like, what? I was like, nobody even helped me, man. I was like, Joey's like, I told you, telling Ella and Selena, and I'm like, bro.
You're like, and I told you needed to come assist. He's like that.
Bro, I don't care what anybody says about Joey.
No, dude. And that's what I'm saying.
Great people, though.
Such amazing family. And I think kept it real. You know what I mean? Like, just good peeps. And then they were like, you need to have a meeting with Pastor Adam. And I was like, sure, I'm down. Because again, the arrogance on me, right? I had such a pride of like, I didn't. And I remember telling Pastor Adam, I'm never going to be a Bible thumper, just so you know that, which is funny because I'm a total Bible thumper at my work, like you name it.
You need to stop saying stuff because God always transforms you
that's like,
into what you say.
That's the thing, yeah. But yeah, ever since then, I got that room, and God has just propelled me. But I always joke on anybody that I had a heart for like newcomers of Christ walking with God, because for me, I wanted to explain to them, dude, it's baby steps sometimes. Eventually, those baby steps will go big steps, run and, leap. I go, but for me, my baby step was just not leaving. And I remember Pastor Adam preaching a sermon about just stay on the boat. And I loved that sermon because that was my thing. I used to say.
Goes with the theme right
here.
Dude, Hello, should have just stayed on the boat.
That's right, bro. That's right.
That's God.
Come on.
Look at that.
Come on. That was confirmation right there.
That was confirmation. Look at that. Stay on the boat.
Dude, everyone's going to be like, not wanting to go in the water no more.
They don't think we collaborated before this podcast. And
they're like,
that,
dude,
right?
did you?
Sure. You guys, bro, that was God. I honestly, God.
So, but yeah, because Dave does not tell you anything, bro. I was like, everyone's like, oh, do you know what he's at? I go, no, dude. I feel like I'm on a roller coaster. I'm just buckling up, not knowing how many dips I'm going to go through. I'm like, dude. But yeah, no, God's been good though. But if I can give that to anybody struggling, feeling like, man, they're not this or that, it really is one step at a time. God gave us 24 hours for a reason. You know what I mean? Stay in that 24 hours. And it's like, and just keep it simple. I think that sometimes too, when you get too much into certain things, you almost start, I got to live up to this or that or this. And I have to remember, it's like, dude, just keep it simple.
I love the body and how God uses the entire body. And the body, for everybody out there that don't understand, is the church and the people that make up the church, right? So Betty, you probably wouldn't have hanged out with Betty.
Oh, no, we laugh all the time.
No, in the world.
Oh, yeah, no.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Right? Ello, totally different.
Yeah.
Right? And Pastor Adam and everybody.
Yeah.
But how God uses everybody, even from the kids in the front to people, to the greeter, to two women, Jen and
all of them.
Another sister coming up to you and just saying hi.
Parking attendants, everyone.
Like, that is so vital. Like, people don't realize, like, and it's not even that, like, Jen, like, just going up to you, but it's a little seed.
Correct.
And then it's a little somebody planting. It was a seed.
Their obedience.
Yeah. It was a seed of the kids being right there, and you're like, okay, that's already hitting me.
Yeah.
Then you should, and they greet, okay, why are they being nice to me? And then the people come up to you, and then it's Betty, and then it's all this stuff, and it's like, I love how but I really love how God takes that perspective, and he and now he uses you. So now he's saying your background, where you came from, how you interpret people right away when they come in, right? I don't know. I already, and it's not judging. Like, people think it's judging, but it's like a little bit of discernment, a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of, or a lot of, I know where this person's at. Like, I always feel like me and Melissa could tell, like, with married couples, like, I know we know when they're struggling. Like, I could just tell. Yeah. I'm like, hey, but God uses that, and God used you to really see people in the church. And I think it's amazing how God could put all these different stories and use all these different people for good. Oh,
dude, and that's what I'm saying. It's only God. Like, no way could I have conducted any of this, because, like I said, Lindsay's brain, me on my own, I was like, I'm coming to take, I'm out, don't talk to me. Like, I genuinely had that mentality, and God just planted me, but I'm saying accountability. I keep pointing to accountability because there was times I wanted to leave. There was times I was in my own head, right? All these different things. And mind you, we're all in this canoe together. Ain't nobody perfect, right? When I feel a lot of times when I have strife with someone, it's probably because that's the person that God's actually trying to connect me with the most, to be honest with you. Or a lot of times God's like, why don't you pray for that person? Because as much as you think they're looking at you the wrong way, they might not even realize they're looking at you. Do you know what I mean? You don't know what happened to them in the car right on the way up. God's showing me grace in all of these things. And so, me and Melissa were talking about that. I actually try to do things in action to counteract those thoughts. And with the judgment thing, oh yeah, God, I'm very what the word says. The measure you judge is the measure you'll be judged with. So I'm like, Lord God, I'm genuinely, I have a heart for when I see someone feeling lost, alone, like they're not getting it. That does something to me, because I'm just like, dude, he went after the one. You know what I mean? That prodigal son, there was something about that where I'm like, no, dude, don't go to the snares of the enemy. Don't allow him to lie to you all the way out of these doors. And it has to be with connection. Rachel, we call it our Shalomi nights. Shalomies. A shout out to my Shalomies. She opens her. Are we doing good on time, by the way?
We're good.
Okay,
don't worry about it.
You know me, dude. I'm a talker. So, literally, it was during the pandemic. We were always, actually, she invited me, I take that back, 5 years ago. I was 2.5 years in my walk. I had a little slip, not with drugs or alcohol, but with something else. And I had to get a touch of fire of a past. And thank God it was only 2 occasions where I touched that fire. But granted, I was not getting discipled. I was so scared to be discipled. I saw Courtney getting discipled. I saw Helen getting discipled. I saw Betty getting discipled. And I was like, oh, good for you guys. But I was like, I did not trust women telling me what to do because of what I've experienced so far. A lot of the people that had authority over me abused it. And so that was like, again, I felt like an abused dog where I was like, oh, and but after that slip, I knew my booty was on fire and she had a bucket of water. So I literally ran to her. And, so when people try to tell me like all the excuses of not getting discipled, one, I always say I have empathy for them because I do understand that it is scary. So I'm not bashing nobody on that end because I was petrified for 2.5 years.
You have to be ready.
You have to be ready because I could give you tons of advice, but if you're not willing to listen or take it, it's literally going against the wall. And on top of that, you're actually robbing somebody else who is ready. Right. That could be using that. And I always tell people that I disciple, I'll give you my time, energy, and resource. But the one thing I will not do is want it more than you. Exactly. If you are not ready, I will smell it on you in 2.5 seconds and I will just love on you. But this will be ending. I go, so
I tell men that all the time.
Yeah.
When they, I need some advice. I need some help. Okay. No. And the first thing that comes to my mouth is look, are you asking me to speak into your life? Are you going to receive what I have to tell you? Yeah. Because I'm gonna keep it 100 with you, and I don't care if you waste this one time. Yeah. Because I'm gonna give you one time. Yeah. But if that's all, that's how it goes down, you're allowing me to speak in your life. If you get mad at me, it's on you. Yeah. So I'm gonna keep it real with you. Are you doing that? Yeah. And it's just like a little waiver I make them sign, and for sure. You know what I mean? Because I'm just like.
Because you're like, no matter what, it's going to come from this word. Yeah. Right? Everything that I give, it's biblically based. A Christian counselor is one that doesn't tell you what they think life is or what the world, they're going to tell you what the Bible interprets how to handle these situations, right? And so to me, and I'm accountable to Rachel. I'll call her sometimes, be like, hey, heads up. And people that know me, I don't gossip or talk. So 7 years I've been there and nobody knows each other's secrets. And half the people don't even realize that people come to my house for hours, on the phone hours. You know what I mean? And that's God, 100%. But it started with Rachel just opening up her home because she was already doing it with Betty. They were having dinners every Thursday. And Rachel just had lost Ted at the time. So I didn't come to her when it was convenient for her. I came to her at her like deepest sorrow, and she served through the suffering. And she's actually done a sermon on that before. And I knew the gig was up. I was like, Lindsay, I can't serve God if I'm playing him. I cannot surrender to God if I'm playing him. So I knew I needed somebody else. And with that relationship and those constant Thursday nights, consistently, God is a God of action, right? God says faith without works is dead. Not by our works we're saved, but God is a participating God. And that's what people don't realize. If you read anything in the Bible about love and action, it comes in Isaiah. It talks about consenting and obeying, or you're going to refuse and rebel. Those are our options. I go, he's either, and when God removes, he's going to restore. God removed everybody, Dave. Nobody understands on that. When I came to this church, I'm saying everyone from my past, homeboys I grew up with, I used to pick up from juvie. I'm talking brothers, sisters that I thought I was going to, grow old with, gone out of my life because they were too big of a trigger. And it was just really bad. Family. When I got sober, I didn't tell my family till 8 months. They did not like that I got sober. Why? It broke a covenant that I had with them. Job, everything about me. I mean, I gained like 60 pounds or 70 pounds. I mean, I literally, God went like this to my old identity and said, I'm going to break you down to build you up. I am going to remove to restore. And people, I think when they hear the removing part, that's when the negotiations come in. And they're like, wait, but if I do this, I go, you're trying to play God, dude. And I'm not saying like play him. I mean like play him. Like you're kind of like you're trying to get in there with the blueprint and saying, okay, but what about this? Right. And God's like, dude, you either, exactly what you said, you're either down to do this change or not. And if you're not, God's not going to push. God's not that kind of God. I love when people say he's a gentleman. He's not going to be pushing on that. But Romans 6:16 changed my life. You are a slave to whatever you obey. You are either going to obey a life of sin, which will lead to death, or obey a life of God, which will lead to righteousness. Right? And that to me changed me because that made me understand I am a slave no matter what. People in the world that aren't saved think, oh, I'm free. I go, no, you ain't. You are a slave to perversion. You're a slave to violence. You're a slave to obsession. You're a slave to something. It's just a question of what's the name of your God? And I say that even the men at my work. Like, I work at a warehouse. I run it. I work the forklift. And these guys are from, like, Norwalk, Montebello. I mean, tatted up, da-da. And I talk about that. I'll come in and start screaming worship. And I sound like, like a seagull, I ain't getting on the worship band anytime soon, but I'll sing with my whole heart. And I've told guys like that because I remember saying, I go, at least keep it real. If you're going to listen to satanic music, and I mean, one of my members actually, like it's legit satanic music. I go, you went from worshiping God. He used to be on his worship team. And I go, how did you go from worshiping God to worshiping Satan? And he looked at me, goes, don't say that. And I go, I'm never going to, one thing I won't do is lie to you because he's already doing that. I go, no one can make you worship. You sing that with your whole heart. You're going to get what comes with it. So long story short, going to all that, I just say those things. Those are like the little things that God has just put in my head to kind of get me there. So go to Rachel's, fruit for fruit, seeds. I mean, watering, God's growing me. Pandemic hits. That's when they promoted me. I'm opening up a building literally May 2020, dude. Like, not the greatest time to open a building. And Rachel and Betty were kind of going around this area of me leaving the 12-step program because what I was identifying with, I was saying I was an alcoholic. And, when you're in those programs, and I'm not bagging because God used that program, man, to put so much foundational work in me from just the integrity to, you know what I mean? Like so much.
Right.
And I always called my God Jesus, always. But long story short, because of my relationship with them, I fully now just serve the Lord since 2020. Like and God, and I remember she telling me, she goes, Lindsay, it's like Peter, because I thought I was abandoning it. She goes, no, you're going to lead him. She goes, Jesus is going to say, cast that net one more time. And he has been doing that. I mean, I remember part of my walk even this year, I was like, Lord, I was struggling in school. I was like, man, is this really what you call me to? Right as I said that, probably a week later, all of a sudden people from the youth started calling me out of nowhere and just asking me for, you know what I mean? I seen breakthroughs which is all God's glory. But that's what I'm telling anybody. I'm like, dude, your feelings are so fleeting. Hang around. First off, make your circle legit. You're the average of who you hang out with. If you hang out with gossips, guess what? You're going to be a gossip. You hang out with people that are genuinely trying to live this Bible. I remember Courtney came over the other weekend and we talked for like 6 hours about our week, challenging each other about how we're going to apply the Bible better this week. Like ironing, sharpening, you know what I mean? And I do that with all my crew. And I'm like, that is something that I thrive off of because I want to be better. I do not want to stay where I need to. I do not want to go backwards. I feel like in the Bible where I'm like, I know the truth. Where am I going to go? We're out. This isn't a game for me. And I think that's what people don't really, I'm like, I don't deal with all this because this is literally my life. If I am out, I am out. I'm talking like 6 feet under or I'm going to the loony bin or jail. One of those, 3. I go, that's my story. I go, so for me, when I go, I'm genuinely with all my heart trying to live this word the best I can. Do I fail? Yes, we're human. That's what I think. I go, but it's the effort. It's the fact that I know that it's not my love for God, but God's love for me that gets me through every single day, and surrounding myself with that iron sharpens iron, getting discipled, being accountable, serving through the suffering. You know what I mean? The whole enchilada. I go, and I got something that I can't pay for, and that's peace. Dave, I can honestly say, even with all my stressfulness and certain things that I have, the one thing I learned that God gave me more than anything was peace and contentment in all circumstances.
From somebody that didn't have that for her whole life.
Oh, dude, I was labeled a chronic depressant from my therapist. I had panic attacks. I didn't realize those were spirits as well. I mean, I'm talking like I had to learn how, and mind you, I'm going to school, I studied under a neurologist, so I could go that, way or whatever, but I understood medications didn't help me. It was literally the hand of God. Now, granted, even in the church, I was on antidepressants just to get me to that next level. So I'm not questioning anybody's thing. My thing is, though, continue to get in your word every day. Do you spend time with them? That's like the first thing I ask people when they go, hey, I'm struggling. I go, tell me your routine with God. Like what's your relationship like? Have you opened your word? And if they say no, That to me is like, and it's not to cap on him because I get it.
It's the basics.
Exactly. It'd be like you saying me and Melissa have a great marriage and you don't sleep in the same room, you never talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you even know her?
Yeah.
You know, and so that's to me where, to me, our trials are going to become our testimonies, right? It says in the book of James right there, it's like you're going to thank him for the trials. They'll produce perseverance, character, which produces hope. You're getting sharpened. No one great came from something easy.
Right.
You know, but I always tell people that feel like they're just failing. You're not failing. You're just in the struggle. You're just in it. You're getting molded, dude.
Yep.
That crap hurts. I was like, I can't name how many times I felt that rod more than something else, but I knew that he disciplines the one he loves.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing too. Love was twisted for me. I didn't understand biblical love.
You were used to being punished.
I was either punished, left, or overly given things I shouldn't have been given.
I tell people there's a difference.
Yeah.
You were probably used to being punished and like, what are these people trying to do? That's why you didn't want to.
Oh.
That's why you didn't want to be discipled or anything. But discipleship and discipline, it's out of love and it's giving you instructions on how to live better.
Dude, I tell people, go to 1 Corinthians, go to Romans. Romans you can't run from. So if someone's going to read Romans, all those excuses if I can't understand the Bible, out the door. Because Romans is like black and white. This is how you live. But it says it all over the Bible. It's like God's saying you're disciplining yourself, right? It's like almost like he compares it to an athlete, right? The book compares it to an athlete. It's like, dude, you think there's days I want to get up and do the right thing? I wake up and cognitively say, good morning, Jesus. And I'm doing that, not to pat myself on the back, because I wake up, I have inflammation, I have some health issues, whatever, that God has been just, again, helping me. And so many year after year. But when I first got sober, man, my health went to a different direction. It was like paying the piper. Like, girl, you haven't been a doctor in like a decade. Here you go. But these things I do, I'll put worship music right on. No one taught me these things. I had to learn how to live with God and not be of the world, but in it. And so, like I said, the morning I wake up, I acknowledge his name and presence regardless of what I feel like in the morning. Even if I'm pissed, whatever, I immediately put worship music on because I already know the battle's starting. And then I go straight into my word and I go into prayer and meditation. Meditation for me is just listening. It's sitting in silence and waiting for him to come, right? I go and, worship music. Those are the basic things that I'm doing of putting on his godly armor just to prepare myself to get out of my house.
Right.
And so that to me is something where when people come to me and they're saying how bad it is, I'm like, and I can give them all that, but if I'm hearing that nothing's getting applied, and no one said it's easy, by the way, so someone's like, oh, it's so hard. I'm like, woman with 7 demons. I used to actually laugh at some scriptures. I knew I can go on and on. We don't got that kind of time, but my point is it's doable.
Right. I think you're a testimony of that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, for 100%. I mean,
if somebody tries to come up, get one over on you, you're just like, no.
Yeah, no. I can smell it. I've sponsored women from all ages, all walks. I'm talking women like gangsters, like knives in there. You know what I mean? But literally that's my thing is whoever it is, it's like, what are your options?
Yeah. Because
the world is going to promise you what only God can give. That's just hands down. And so when people try to say like, oh, it's this or that, I go, you will be a slave of whatever you obey. Just know that. So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming out.
Bro, I felt like a lot more like midway. I was like, all right.
I tell everybody, once you get going, you forget about the cameras, you forget about the lights, and everything, and the mics, and you just start going.
Yeah, for sure.
I knew you wouldn't have a problem.
Oh, dude, thank you.
It was amazing.
Nah, you guys are a great family. I love getting to know you guys more and more. So, and honestly, Dave, this is amazing that you're doing this. And again, I saw you in Melissa's podcast. Just killed it. I told her, girl, if you guys can flirt like that at 29 years married, you know what you're talking about.
Still in love. Yes. And it's not an act.
No.
And you would know if it was.
Bro, that's what I'm saying. Hey, real recognizes real. So, yeah.
So we do one last thing.
Oh, Lord. Jesus be with me.
It's called the Street Gospel Furious 5.
How furious are we getting? All right. Hit me with it.
You ready?
I'm ready. Let's just dive in.
Question number 1 on the Street Gospel Furious 5.
All right. My hands are sweating.
If God-fearing, Bible-believing sister in the Lord, Lindsay, got into a fight. How would she do 7 years later?
Oh, that's a good one, because that's actually almost happened to me. I obey the word. So for me,
But do you think you'd still be able to scrap?
oh, hands down. I'm sorry. That I didn't realize the question. I was like, oh yeah, no, that.
You were getting all spiritual.
I was like, by the name of Jesus. No, yeah, no, hands down. I think that's where my confidence comes in that, because look, I men work for me that are scrappers, and I remember I had to stop a fight one time at my job, and I go, if you got hit in the face right now, I told him just like this, I go, you getting hit in the face, you know how to defend yourself, and that tripped him out. I go, then what do you have to prove? So to me, look, I'm not looking for it. I'm not saying like, oh, I'm the toughest, whatever. I just know I can handle my own. I'll kind of leave it at that.
Leave it right there.
I'll leave it right there. Yeah.
Question number 2 on the Street Gospel Furious Fight. Obviously, Jesus replaced the drinking and a lot of stuff. But what do you do physically to kind of help? You know, I do a little jujitsu. It relieves some stress. Do you do anything physically or any hobby-wise that gets you like, okay, I need to recalibrate here?
So for me, it's really just sitting still. I know it sounds so weird. I used to be a gym rat, hard to believe, but back in my heyday, I was like Danny Bonaducci, dude. I could run 5 miles with a cigarette in my mouth. Like I literally could bust that. Not so much anymore. God's working on that. But
you brought up the Danny Bonaducci.
Oh, dude,
because I remember that.
Do you remember that he's on the treadmill? And
he'd be ripped, and then he'd be running down Hollywood Boulevard, and he'd be smoking.
I'm like, dude, that used to be me, straight up. I used to run like 5.
I was the only one that remembered that.
Nah, dude, I was like, I could run 5 miles in like 45 minutes with a cigarette in my mouth back in my heyday. But no, nowadays, honestly, for me, because of the ministry I do and everything where I just have a lot of heavy mental stuff. For me right now, I'm hoping it changes into physical like workout, but it really is just getting home and recentering. So sometimes it's putting on a movie, to be honest with you, or putting on a show, or even watching a sermon, or like, and sometimes I'll even just worship in my living room. I know it sounds, I'll just like take off my shoes and I will just get it released in that way. But for me, quiet time is something that my brain needs to recalibrate. And I think, you know, Jesus did that all the time. He had to step away. That's literally, not saying like, oh, that was, you know, but for me, I have to get quiet time in order to get me kind of leveled out. So my couch, that's my baby right there. I'm like, girl, we have a date. Me and you.
Oh, she's a girl.
Yeah, she's a girl. I was like, I ain't sitting on no dude couch. I was like, oh.
Question number 4 on the Street Gospel Furious 5. Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Oh, Dave, you got to hit me with that. Because that means I got to get real vulnerable with this one. I do see myself married, if I'm going to be honest with you. God gave me a word on that a couple years ago, and that's why I probably don't do what most single women because sometimes like there'll be altar calls and stuff, and people come up to me and they're like, why didn't you go up there? I'm like, God gave me a word on, I feel like I'm like a nun. I've been single for 8 years, and I was a girl that never was single, by the way, never. So, but with God, you know, I literally feel like nuns. I'm like, I just give it like, I'm not gonna just go get married to anybody, you know what I mean? So for me, I do believe in that time. I want to have my license. I would like to be a practicing Christian therapist, counselor. I would love to be doing more ministries with my husband.
Okay,
like kind
she's
of
claiming that.
Oh, do like evangelistic
you know,
stuff.
there's a lot of single, mature brothers that watch this show.
Oh,
you know what I mean? So,
Lord Jesus.
I mean, maybe it's a good thing you don't have social media, because they might be hitting you up, Lindsay. You
Dave,
know what I mean?
They're hearing these stories and they go, that girl crazy. Thank God Jesus had a hand on her.
Hey,
I'm like, oh Lord, I live a very quiet, humble life right now, so, which I love. So if he's down for that, I'm down for that. You got to serve the Lord and have that.
Question number 5 on the Street Gospel Furious 5.
Go.
Best place to eat in your neighborhood?
Oh, snap. You know what's so sad? I mean, I'm trying to think. I'm old school, because this is where like it was around the corner from my grandma's, and they have one down the street from me, and it's not even like, I love taca de ande. Like I love taqueria de ande. Like I was raised with it right there on the corner of my grandma's house, and they have one in Placentia. And so there's a little part of me that I'll just go and get some like al pastor tacos and just get like
chill.
a carne. Yeah. So to me, like I love Taqueria de Ande, and Pepe's is pretty good too down the street.
So are you more? What side do you lean more to?
It,
In your overall.
Honestly, it really depends. Because look, my grandma didn't teach us Spanish. She taught us how to cuss in Spanish and order food. That gets me in trouble because I'll go to Taqueria de Ande. I go, oh, can I get a carne asada burrito con todo? Then they start going down. I go, oh, my bad. That's on me.
Oh, so you're Italian now?
Yeah, I'm Italian now. It really depends. But I don't know. I really resonate with both roots in a lot of different ways. So, yeah, it's kind of both.
So dope.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I appreciate you coming out.
Thank you very much for
And
having
thank you
me.
for being a good friend to my wife.
Oh, dude, she
loves you.
I told her, I go, girl, I could read you have no bad motives in your heart. She is a genuine, amazing person. This is awesome, dude, and thank you for having me. I feel like this is such a privilege. So
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great. You know, my wife's gangster too, so that's probably why.
Immediately. We just were like, yeah, it was awesome.
Appreciate you coming out.
Right
Thank
on,
you.
appreciate everything.
That'll conclude this episode of the Street Gospel Furious 5, Kevin. Of the Street Gospel Podcast. We did finish the Furious 5. We had Lindsay Costa. Make sure you check this out. Send it to somebody. We love you guys. We appreciate you. We out.